Chapter 83. 83. Murderer. After Happy took the recovery potion, his body recovered in a short 5 minutes. However, Mo sure felt that there was something fishy about this. It was definitely not an accident. Outside the door, Oldly was still knocking on the door. Mo sure opened the door and said, "Happy is fine." Oldly and Old Ma quickly looked over. They saw that not only did Happy not turn into a zombie, but the wound on his hand had also completely disappeared. Both of them were very surprised. Mo sure looked at Old Ma and said, "There's something fishy about this." Old Ma nodded. Of course there was something fishy. However, he felt that Mo sure was even more fishy. Happy was clearly bitten by a zombie, but he was brought into the room by Mo sure. Not only did he not turn into a zombie, but the terrifying wound on the back of his hand had also completely disappeared. Was there anything more fishy than this? However, he was after all a general and someone who had been the chief of a base. With just a thought, he had already guessed most of it. He did not say anything. Everyone had their secrets. Since it was very likely that Mo sure had already discovered his secret but had not made it public, then he naturally would not reveal Mo sure's secret. He said to Oldly beside him, "Call a few people over to deal with the corpse. Don't mention Happy's injury for now." Although Oldly was an honest man, he was not a fool. Besides, he treated Mo sure and Happy as his children. He knew that this matter could not be mentioned at this time. He immediately nodded. "I know." Then he walked out. Mo sure went to the morgue where the accident happened. He covered the entire room and the surroundings with his psychic power to investigate carefully. Soon he found a clue. He saw that the end of the chain had a small opening. At first glance, this should be the chain that had been used for a long time. It had been worn very thin, which was why the zombie had used brute force to break free. However, Mo sure knew that Happy was very careful. As long as he found that more than half of the chain was worn out, he would find someone to replace it with a new chain. Although this chain was not new, it was not worn out much. Furthermore, the age of the last ring was slightly different from that of the other rings. Normal people might not be able to notice this difference. However, Mo sure had level 10 telekinesis. This small difference that was difficult to detect was as obvious as under a microscope in his eyes. On the surface, this chain looked no different from the other chains. But in fact, it had long been rusted beyond recognition. It was just that its surface had been treated so that it didn't look too old. It was obvious that someone had changed the chain in advance. In Mo sure's heart, anger suddenly rose. It was man-made. Someone wanted to kill Happy. Perhaps it was not his weakness. Instead, it was directed at him. Mo sure's expression was incomparably gloomy. His eyes were filled with killing intent. His immense telekinesis instantly spread out. It covered a radius of 1,000 meters. Within 1,000 meters, everything could be as big as the overall layout of each building or as small as a fingerprint left behind by someone. Everything entered his mind. After reaching level 10, his telekinesis was already able to detect minute details. Fingerprints that were hard to see with the human eye were as obvious as a searchlight to him. Old Ma also came over at this time and asked, "What did you find?" Mo sure shook his head. From the investigation of his telekinesis, he had not found anyone suspicious so far. Before finding the murderer, he did not want to tell anyone. At the same time, the people of the corpse hunting team also arrived. Now that there was a hunting group, the function of the corpse hunting team had been changed from hunting corpses to dealing with some chores. Their function was similar to the police before the apocalypse. The person of the corpse hunting team asked, "Is anyone injured?" Oldly glanced at Happy, lowered his head and answered, "No." The corpse hunters heaved a sigh of relief. Oldly said again, "We all feel that something is not right about this matter." The captain of the corpse hunting team joked, "Why? Could it be that someone wants to harm a corpse keeper?" Old Ma's expression was solemn as he said, "Happy is a very careful girl. It's impossible that the chain is so badly worn and she didn't notice it. There must be something fishy about this matter. Please investigate carefully." When the captain of the corpse hunting team heard the previous chief say so, he immediately took it seriously. He asked the team members to investigate the scene carefully. In the end, they found that there was something wrong with the chain. "Have there been any suspicious people coming to the corpse farm recently? Or has anyone come to the corpse farm?" Old Ma thought about it and answered, "Suspicious people? No one else. Oh, by the way, the 2 people from base C2 came yesterday." The members of the corpse hunting team looked at each other, and they seemed to have understood something. Oldly also reacted. "That's right, it must be them. Why did they come to our corpse farm for no reason? And ever since they came to our base has not been peaceful. First, Little Bean was attacked. Then, the mutated zombie ran out of the lab. Now, the zombies in the corpse farm mysteriously ran out. They must be the ones who did it. When Happy heard this, she seemed to have thought of something. She gestured with sign language. Oldly translated, she said that when they came yesterday she noticed that the man's gaze was malicious. When the woman looked at her, she seemed to be a little angry. Those two bastards. Of course, the last sentence was Old Lee's own words. When Old Ma heard this, he pondered for a moment. He analyzed, I noticed what Happy said at that time as well. That woman called Jin Shirshir was not angry, but she has always been a jealous woman. The corpse hunters nodded in agreement. Jealous women were the scariest. The captain said, for now the two people from base C2 are the most suspicious. And one of them is a hunter and the other is a psychokinesis. It's easy for them to do all this. As for their motive, it's very likely that they want to destroy base C1 so that they can obtain our resources. Of course, this is just a preliminary guess. We still need to investigate further. In any case, let's take those two people into custody first. When Immortal heard this, anger surged in his heart. Killing intent burst out of his eyes. The captain of the corpse hunters led his men and quickly went to the two people's residence. At the same time, he had someone inform the body hunters. One of them was a hunter and the other was a psychokinesis. If they really wanted to resist, the corpse hunters would not be able to handle them. At this time, the two people were already packing up and planning to leave by helicopter. The captain of the corpse hunters gritted his teeth and blocked the two people's path. Both of you, a case happened at the corpse farm today and you two are the most suspicious. So I can't let you leave. Jin Shirshir, who was dressed in leather, was instantly angry when she heard this. You were the one who chased us away and now we want to leave, you are the one who is stopping us. Do you people from base C1 really think that a level 4 psychokinesis is easy to deal with? The corpse hunters knew that a level 4 psychokinesis was not to be trifled with. But at this time they could only brace themselves. In short, when this matter is investigated clearly and there are no problems, you can leave. The woman stood upright and sneered, if we want to leave, who can stop us? As she spoke, she used her telekinesis. Thump, 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 all the corpse hunters at the scene knelt on the ground. These corpse hunters still wanted to resist. But Hao Ren had already attacked. Bang 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 bang, 5 kicks in a row. The 5 corpse hunters were all sent flying more than 20 meters away. After landing, they rolled for another 5 or 6 meters before coming to a stop. They all vomited blood and coughed repeatedly. Chapter 84. 84 They're not the murderers? The man and woman had defeated the 5 members of the body hunters. Jin Shirshir snorted disdainfully and walked toward the helicopter. Hao Ren shrugged and said with a pained expression, that's right. I wanted to get along with you as an ordinary person, but I didn't expect to be alienated in return. With that, he strode toward the helicopter. However, at this moment, a few of the body hunters who lived nearby had rushed over. One of them even aimed a rocket launcher at the helicopter. Jin Shirshir frowned when she saw this. You're courting death. As she spoke, she unzipped her leather jacket. 48 flying daggers suddenly floated out from the leather jacket. They flew toward the body hunter who was holding the rocket launcher. Puff, 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 puff. In almost an instant, the arms of the body hunter with the rocket launcher were dripping with blood. The other body hunters wanted to attack. However, the 48 flying daggers kept shuttling back and forth on their bodies. Puff, 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 puff. The sound of the sharp daggers piercing into flesh was heard. Moreover, this woman did not kill these body hunters directly. Instead, she let the 48 flying daggers cut through their limbs and bodies, making them suffer the pain of their bodies being cut. At this moment, a shadow in the distance flew toward them at an extremely fast speed. Whoosh, in almost 2 seconds, it had arrived in front of them. Hao Ren snorted when he saw this. He threw a punch at the shadow. Bang! That shadow was instantly blown apart by the explosion. A cloud of dark green smoke suddenly spread out in all directions. Oh no, we've been tricked. Hao Ren quickly covered his nose. Jin Shirshir also held her breath. However, it was too late. Although the two of them had only inhaled 1 breath. However, their consciousness was gradually becoming blurry. It turned out that after the incident with the body hunters last time, the laboratory had set up a special project to develop a weapon to deal with hunters and psychokinesis. In the end, they developed this high-strength anesthetic bomb. As long as the anesthetic bomb exploded, hunters and psychokinesis inhaled the high-strength anesthetic inside the bomb would be anesthetized in just 10 seconds. Jin Shirshir fell to the ground in just 2 seconds. Hao Ren held on for 10 seconds, but in the end he couldn't hold on. He cursed, "It's hard to be a good person." He fell to the ground. After a moment he lost consciousness. It was not until then that the 2 hunters of the body hunters appeared. They took these 2 people. That afternoon almost everyone knew about this. Everyone in the entire base was burning with anger. They spontaneously came to the detention room where the 2 men were being held and cursed and roared. These 2 fellows are definitely up to no good. Since they've been here It's this the gods' loss. They hurt the hunters and used throwing knives to cut the hunters' hands and feet instead of giving them a quick death. They're animals. He's just like Lun Yan and Lu Wang. Kill them. No, they're so cruel. They should be burned to death. Burn them. Burn them. Because of Lu Wang and Lun Yan, the people of Base C1 didn't trust outsiders very much. Now the actions of these 2 people had finally ignited everyone's anger. In the end it was Guojutao, the leader of the body hunters, who came. He persuaded everyone they've done such a thing. Everyone wants to kill them. I'm no exception. But there's a procedure for everything. This matter needs to be further interrogated to determine their guilt. Only then can they be punished. So everyone should go back first. When there's a result here, I'll inform everyone immediately. At first, everyone still didn't agree. But they still respected the leader of the body hunters. In the end, after more than 10 minutes of persuasion by Guojutao, everyone left. At this time, Mo was walking step by step toward the detention center. No one knew how much anger Mo needed to vent at this time. When he was only 1,000 meters away from the detention center, he had already spread out his telekinesis. He could clearly detect that Guojutao was personally interrogating the 2 people in the detention center. Hao Ren was really panicking at this time. He thought that with their strength they could do whatever they wanted in this base. But he didn't expect that they would be easily subdued by a strong anesthetic bomb. This base C1 could actually develop such a thing. It seemed that the base still needed a laboratory. As for Zhen Shishir, although she wasn't as panicked as Hao Ren, there was a trace of regret and panic in her eyes. Guojutao entered the detention center and looked at the 2 people who were tied up like dumplings. He said coldly, "Speak." Hao Ren shook his head repeatedly. "Leader, I can swear to God that we didn't do it." "Absolutely not." Guojutao snorted and said to the people outside, "Send this guy to the zombie farm to feed the zombies." Immediately, someone came in and dragged Hao Ren out. Outside the door, Hao Ren made a squeal like a pig being slaughtered. "What I said is true, leader." Guojutao didn't care at all. He looked at Zhen Shishir and said, "It's your turn." Zhen Shishir's face turned pale. At this time she no longer had the arrogance from before. She said with a trembling voice, "It's not us, we didn't do anything." "If you didn't do anything?" Attacking a captain, mutated zombies escaped from the laboratory, zombies in the zombie farm broke free from the chains. Since you came, strange things have happened one after another. You're telling me it has nothing to do with you? The woman in leather shook her head repeatedly. "It's really not us." Guojutao nodded. "Well, then I'll ask another question. You can't deny that you used a flying knife to hurt those zombie hunters. And you didn't kill them directly but tortured them cruelly with a flying knife. What can't a person like you do?" The woman in leather shook her head again. I didn't torture them, I just wanted to scare them away. Otherwise they would have been killed long ago." Guojutao obviously didn't believe this. He nodded. "Well, you still don't want to tell the truth? You'll be fed to the zombies later." About a kilometer away from the detention room, Mo, whose heart was burning with rage, suddenly stopped in his tracks. After his telekinesis reached level 10, he could detect slight changes in people's brain waves. When people lie, the frequency of their brain waves will be slightly faster than when they tell the truth. When the man and woman were being interrogated just now, their brainwave frequency did not change at all from the usual while they were speaking. This was enough to show that what the 2 said was true. All the previous signs pointed to the 2 of them as the culprits. But now he suddenly found that these 2 people weren't the murderers. Mo frowned. If it wasn't them, then who? If it wasn't them, who else could it be? Could it be that the clues were cut off here? Chapter 85. If these 2 people were not the murderer, then who could it be? Mo frowned. He had been living a carefree life before. He rarely used his brain. At most, he would think about where to check in and how to get evolution points. When did he solve a case? But after a while he thought of someone. From the looks of it, Xiaodou was attacked, the mutated zombie escaped from the laboratory, and the zombie chain in the zombie farm was changed. These three things were very likely to be related. Then Xiaodou was the key person. Thinking of this, he immediately strode to the hospital. Xiaodou's injuries were more serious. Although a week had passed, he was still in the intensive care unit. Emotion came to Xiaodou's ward. The intensive care unit was not a place that anyone could enter. He told the nurse that Xiaodou was once his colleague. The nurse hesitated for a moment and asked the doctor. Finally, she entered the ward and asked Xiaodou. Then she walked out and whispered to Emotion, "Don't let the patient speak. You only have 5 minutes." Emotion nodded and entered the intensive care unit. In the intensive care unit, a strong smell of medicine assailed his nose. The room was very quiet. Only the sound of the ECG monitor could be heard. Beep, beep, it was like a countdown to life. Emotion came to the bedside and saw that Xiaodou's eyes were tightly shut. He seemed to be in pain. He paused for a moment and said, "Xiaodou." When Xiaodou heard this, his eyelids trembled a few times and he opened his eyes. His eyes flickered and he seemed to be a little excited. He opened his mouth with difficulty. "I have been waiting for you." When he spoke, it was as if there was something stuck in his throat. It was uncomfortable to hear. Emotion nodded. "Go ahead." Xiaodou opened his mouth again with difficulty. "The person who injured me was not planning to attack me. He was planning to attack you." Emotion heard this and his eyes flickered. He looked at Xiaodou. This meant that Xiaodou took a bullet for him. He had always thought that Xiaodou was selfish and only cared about himself. He did not expect that he would take a bullet for him. Xiaodou's throat made a noise. He panted for a moment before continuing. "I may be selfish in small matters, but you are the guardian of the base. The base cannot live without you." Emotion looked at Xiaodou, his heart stirring slightly. "You saw the murderer?" Little Bean gasped for breath with difficulty and said, "His face was covered, but I am very sensitive to a person's body shape. As long as I see his figure, I will be able to recognize him." Emotion nodded. "When you recover tomorrow, I'll bring everyone in the base to you for you to recognize." His tone was filled with boundless dominance and ice-cold killing intent. That night, when Emotion signed in, he didn't sign any more enhancers. Instead, he signed 10 bottles of recovery potion. He had been too careless in the past. He believed that with his strength, there were very few things in the base that could hurt him. Therefore, they didn't pay much attention to the recovery potion. The effect of the recovery potion was too heaven-defying. It was impossible for him to casually give it to others. Hence, he did not have a lot of recovery medicine in stock, and he had already given Happy his last bottle during the day. But after this incident, Emotion understood. He still had to prepare a few bottles of recovery potion on a daily basis. Although he might not be able to use it himself, and he was not a saint who would casually give it to others. But he could not guarantee that under special circumstances, he would use it to save the lives of key people. Just like now. Emotion did not delay. After getting the recovery potion, he immediately rushed to the hospital. However, when he was more than 900 meters away from the hospital, he suddenly felt that something was not right. He spread out his psychokinesis. In an instant, everything within a radius of 1,000 meters had nowhere to hide. Sure enough, he detected a figure near the flower bed behind the hospital's inpatient department building. Moreover, this person was a psychokinesis. He was controlling a throwing knife to fly toward the window on the second floor. And that window was the window of Xiaodou's intensive care unit. When Emotion saw this, the killing intent in his eyes appeared again. The berserk pressure instantly pressed down on him. The black figure only felt as if there was an overwhelming pressure around him that pressed down on him. His psychokinesis was suppressed back into his body in an instant. The throwing knife fell into the flower bed under the window. He was shocked in his heart. His eyes were full of panic and he hurriedly tried to escape. However, the next moment, Emotion's figure crossed more than 900 meters in an instant and was already in front of him. In the place where Emotion just stood, under the moonlight, there was only a 10-meter tall and 30-meter long dragon shadow left. After a while, the shadow slowly dissipated. When the black figure saw Emotion suddenly appear, he was even more terrified. He obviously knew Emotion's strength and knew that in front of Emotion, he had no chance of escaping at all. Emotion's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. "Speak." He only spat out this word that was as cold as a knife. The black figure's face was terrified, but he shook his head. "No, I can't." Before his voice died away, he felt a violent and unparalleled psychokinesis rush into his brain in an instant. The next moment his brain went blank. His whole person was stunned on the spot. There was no longer any fear on his face. He looked around foolishly. Just like a fool. This was the skill that Immortal had signed in, memory plunder. With an unparalleled psychokinesis, he could forcibly plunder other people's memories. And the intelligence of those who had their memories plundered would be greatly reduced in an instant, or even directly become an idiot. In Immortal's mind there were many more memories. From these memories he saw the person who issued the mission to psychokinesis. It was a man wearing a black mask and camouflage clothes. The man with the black mask had a rough voice. He said, "I didn't expect that after we carefully arranged so many clues to lead him to those two people, he still saw through it. We were careless and didn't kill the captain in advance. Go tonight and kill the captain." Immortal saw the masked man's figure from the memory of psychokinesis. For him, who was at level 10 psychokinesis, his sensitivity to the figure was far beyond that of ordinary people. Next, he just needed to find this person in the base. Then he would be able to find the real culprit behind the scenes. At this moment, psychokinesis, who had already become a fool, slowly moved his feet. He walked into the distance unconsciously. Immortal moved his psychokinesis. Bang, there was a soft sound. That person's head suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. These people, no matter who they were targeting, they had almost killed him. Then they didn't even have the right to be fools. There was only one result for them. Death. Immortal didn't pay attention to his corpse. With a leap, he had already arrived at the window on the second floor. He pushed open the window and entered the room. In the room, the nurse who accompanied Xueqi was taking a nap. Xueqi was also sleeping. Immortal took out a bottle of recovery medicine. He opened Xueqi's mouth and poured it down his throat. Then he jumped out of the ward. He spread out his psychokinesis and explored an area with a diameter of 2 kilometers. With light footsteps, he rushed out of the hospital like a black light with endless murderous intent. Chapter 86. In the base, under the moonlight. Immortal was like a black shadow that carried boundless killing intent as he flashed past at high speed. Although he did not see the masked man's face from the memory he plundered, he remembered his figure. As a level 10 psychokinesis, he could detect fingerprints. He was even more sensitive to the figure. Ordinary people's perception of the figure was at most the overall impression of height, weight, age, gender, and so on. But psychokinesis could split these overall impressions into countless parts. How wide the shoulders were, how tall the person was, and how much he weighed. How big his ears were, how far apart his legs were, how long his feet were, and how long his fingers were. Psychics only needed to use their psychic power to scan the area, and they would be able to tell what was going on. And Immortal's telekinesis had reached level 10, which was even more exaggerated. As long as he swept with his telekinesis, he could clearly see how many eyebrows there were. Therefore, to ordinary people, this small difference was as conspicuous as the brilliant sun in his eyes. In addition to his telekinesis radius of 1,000 meters, the diameter was 2,000 meters. He jumped forward at a speed of 190 meters per second. His whole body was like a radar scanning a diameter of 2,000 meters, moving forward quickly. Not a single person in the base could hide from his mind. With his speed, it would only take him 10 minutes to sweep the entire base. When Immortal's scan reached the 5th minute, in the hospital's intensive care unit, Little Bean, who was sleeping, suddenly opened his eyes. Then he felt something strange in his body. There was no longer the strange feeling in his throat. The wound near his heart no longer hurt. He could even feel that his body was full of power. In surprise, he touched the wound on his chest. There was no pain. He quickly tore the gauze on his chest. There was no wound on his chest. It had long been completely healed. Looking at the intact skin on his chest, his eyes widened. Before he went to sleep, he was half dead. He even doubted if he could ever recover. But when he woke up, his body had completely recovered. Even if he experienced it personally, he still could not believe it. What was going on? Could it be the mysterious powerhouse? Yes, it must be him. During the day, the mysterious powerhouse came. And at that time he had said, "When you recover tomorrow." He recovered by himself at night. It was definitely him. Apart from the mysterious expert, he could not think of anyone else. This made him even more amazed by the mysterious expert's ability. Previously, he only knew that the mysterious expert was very strong, so strong that it was unbelievable. But now, he realized that the mysterious expert was not only powerful, but also had such a strange ability. He was able to recover from his serious injuries in just a few hours. To put it in an exaggerated manner, this was simply akin to regenerating flesh and bones from the dead. How could the mysterious expert be so strong? Thinking of this, he jumped off the bed, went to the closet next to him and took out his clothes. He tore off the hospital gown and threw it aside. After changing into his own clothes, he immediately felt much more comfortable. The mysterious expert had said that when he recovered, he would bring everyone to him so that he could identify the murderer. Therefore he had to be prepared in advance. The nurse who was dozing off next to him was awakened by the noise made by Xueqi. He was instantly shocked. Who is it? She thought that someone else had broken into the room. And the light in the room was dim, so she could not see clearly at all. Xueqi replied, "It's me. It's all Xueqi." The nurse did not believe it at all. Little Bean looked like he was on the verge of death. How could it be him? She hurried to the door of the ward. He cried out in fear, "Someone come quickly, save me, save me." Suddenly the people on the entire floor were awakened by her sharp cry for help. 2 doctors on duty and more than a dozen nurses all ran out. The nurse looked back at the figure in the room and shouted, "Someone broke into the ward. Hurry, hurry!" Everyone was shocked and hurried to the door of the ward. A male doctor wearing glasses strode into the room and slapped the light switch. He shouted to the others, "Protect the patient." As he spoke, he picked up the chair next to him and faced the figure. The others also rushed into the room and went to the bedside. This person broke into the ward in the middle of the night and was likely to harm the patient. However, the other doctor saw that there was no one on the bed except for the bedding. He immediately exclaimed, "Where is he?" Everyone also looked at the bed. Sure enough, there was no patient on the bed. Then everyone looked at the intruder. "What did you do to the patient?" the male doctor wearing glasses questioned angrily. But halfway through his words he suddenly stopped. Everyone else was also stunned at this moment. What was going on? They just felt that this person was very similar to the patient. But in a hurry they did not have time to take a closer look. Now that they looked at it, this person was more than just similar to the patient. They were exactly the same. The biggest similarity was that they were both cross-eyed. Xueqi was a little embarrassed at this moment and said, "Well, it's me, Xueqi." Everyone's eyes widened when they heard this sentence. The accompanying nurse looked at Little Bean from head to toe in surprise and asked tentatively, "What's wrong? Are you really Captain Xueqi?" Xueqi smiled bitterly and said, "Who else could it be other than me? I'm really sorry to scare everyone. Sorry." When everyone heard him admit it and saw the hospital gown thrown aside by him, they were all in disbelief. Is he really Captain Xueqi? What's going on? Especially his attending doctor and accompanying nurse. Both of them looked at Xueqi as if they had seen a ghost. They knew their patient best. Only 3 hours ago he was still in a critical period. He could lose his life at any time. But when he woke up he was alive and kicking. Could it be any more exaggerated? Xueqi wanted to explain, but he could not think of any words after thinking for a long time. In the end he could only honestly say, "Maybe, the mysterious strong man saved me." When everyone heard this, instead of being relieved, they were even more surprised. "Do you mean that the mysterious strong man is a doctor? A doctor with great medical skills? He has been hiding in our hospital all this time?" Xueqi smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know. In short, I think it should be the mysterious strong man. I can't think of any other explanation except for him." The male doctor wearing glasses said in shock, "The most important thing now is to do a comprehensive examination of your body. Nurse Lee, go and invite the dean here. We must let the dean know about this." Nurse Lee was the nurse who screamed just now. She nodded quickly in surprise. "Okay, I'll go now." With that, she squeezed through the crowd and walked outside. Her footsteps were extremely fast and she went far away. She was wearing flat shoes, but she walked with the momentum of high heels. A moment later, in the courtyard, Nurse Lee's scream came again. "Ah!" Chapter 87. Ah! In the hospital's courtyard, Xiao Li's sharp scream was like a sharp blade, cutting through the night sky. Everyone in the ICU felt a chill run down their spines. What happened to Xiao Li this time? They hurried downstairs and came to the courtyard. Then they saw a headless body lying in the courtyard. Everyone was shocked. "This is psychokinesis. Quick, call the hunter group." If it was psychokinesis, the hunter group couldn't do it. They could only call the hunter group. Soon, the members of the hunter group were invited over. After carefully inspecting the scene, they found 11 throwing knives on the headless body. Then they found a 12th throwing knife in the flower bed downstairs of the inpatient department. "This person is psychokinesis," a member of the hunter group said. The other person frowned and said, and the way he was shot in the head also seems to be psychokinesis. Then the two of them looked at each other. There was a hint of awe in their eyes. The dean next to them asked, "Do you know who the murderer is?" The two of them didn't say. They only said, "This matter needs to be further investigated." Then they asked someone to take the body back. The two members of the hunter group had probably guessed who did it. There were only two psychokinesis in the entire base. One was the woman in base C2. But she was now in the detention room and had been injected with a drug that could suppress her psychic power. She couldn't escape at all, let alone kill anyone. The other was the mysterious powerhouse. But they had seen the mysterious powerhouse's methods. He blew up the head without saying anything. He tore people apart without saying anything. Just thinking about it made their scalps tingle. Of course, they didn't dare to say it in public. This matter had to be decided by the leader. At the same time, Xueqi finally stopped after sweeping through half of the base. His psychic power fell under the water tower. There was a room under the water tower. There was only one person in the room. This person was pacing back and forth. Obviously he was waiting for a reply. This person's figure completely overlapped with the figure in the memory he had just plundered, whether it was the whole body or a part of it. At this moment he was not wearing a mask. However, Xueqi was 100% sure that he was the masked man in psychokinesis's memory. He took a step forward. Rumble, the door of the room, which had been reinforced with steel plates, flew out of the room. The tables, chairs and cabinets in the room were smashed into pieces. That person was startled and hurriedly spread out his telekinesis. However, very quickly, his telekinesis seemed to be suppressed by a huge mountain. It was instantly suppressed back into his body. He looked up in shock. There was already a person standing in his room. This person looked to be in his 20s. His camouflage uniform had already turned black. His eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Xueqi's cold gaze swept over this person. The water tower was located in Area F, which was quite far from the zombie farm. Xueqi had come here a few times in the past 7 or 8 years just to sign in. However, after discovering that the water tower could only produce a few bottles of water at most, he never came again. Who would have thought that old Zhang the water tower was actually a psychokinesis? And he had been hiding it all this time. Xueqi's voice was cold. "Speak, who ordered you to do this?" Old Zhang looked at Xueqi and retreated, shaking his head. "I don't." In the next moment his voice abruptly stopped. An enormous amount of telekinesis had already surged into his brain. And his memories were instantly plundered. His brain was also severely damaged. His mind was blank. He was also dumbfounded on the spot. Xueqi checked these memories. Soon he confirmed another person. He did not hesitate at all. He turned around. With light footsteps he rushed out of the room. At the same time old Zhang, who was like a fool, also had his head explode with a bang. The room was not big to begin with and the walls and floor were covered in blood. The headless corpse fell straight to the ground. The furniture debris on the ground was smashed into the air. Xueqi recalled the figure of the person he had just seen in old Zhang's memory. He compared it to everyone in the base that he had just scanned. Soon he confirmed who it was. He strode towards the garbage incinerator in Area C. A group of patrolling members only saw a black shadow approaching from afar at a fast speed. Before they could react, it brushed past them. Then it flew into the distance. Their hearts trembled. Not good, there's an attacker. However, they did not have time to inform the others. They felt their heads swell, their vision went black, and they fainted one after another. At this moment, Xueqi was in a hurry to track down the mastermind behind the scenes. He would not allow anything to hinder his investigation. Soon, from the garbage incinerator, Xueqi followed the clues and found the sewage treatment plant in Area W, the farm in Area N, and the cafeteria in Area S. These people were very cunning. Basically, they had one-way connections. And these people were all psychokinesis. Although their telekinesis was not high, at most level 2 psychokinesis. But there were so many psychokinesis in the base and they were all hidden and never exposed. Obviously, there must be someone or some force behind them. But this force was hidden so deeply in the base. It was really strange. However, Xueqi did not think about this at all. With such a domineering skill like memory plunder, no matter what strength you had, no matter how deep you hid, you could follow the clues and find out. Only 25 minutes had passed since he left the hospital, and Xueqi had already found more than 30 hidden psychokinesis. In the end, he finally found a key person in the memories of a repairman. He saw that the person was wearing a wide bamboo hat. Under the shadow of the bamboo hat, his face could not be seen clearly. He always had his arms crossed, and in his arms was a slender sword about 1.5 meters long. He looked like a Jianghu hero. From the memories of others that he had obtained before, he often heard the word hero. Obviously, this hero was the mastermind behind the scenes. After receiving this information, Mo turned his head. He instantly left the repair field. His telekinesis covered a diameter of 2,000 meters, searching for the hero's figure. At the same time, the hunter group had also received the news. In just 20 minutes they had found 3 headless corpses and 5 unconscious patrols. The leader, Xueqi, frowned. He had already guessed that this was very likely the work of the mysterious powerhouse. But what was the reason for this? Although the mysterious powerhouse was powerful and ruthless, but he had never killed for no reason before. He thought of what happened today. He thought of the zombies that suddenly ran out of the zombie farm and almost bit the mute girl. It seemed that he must have angered Mo. With his understanding of Mo, even if he was angered, he would not casually kill unrelated people. It seemed that he must have found something. Chapter 88. Midnight. The bright moon hung high in the sky. Other than the few people on night watch, almost everyone else in the hunting group was mobilized. They all knew that something big would definitely happen tonight. At the same time, Mo had already used his telekinesis to scan the entire base. However, he didn't find anyone similar to that chivalrous man. Could it be that that person wasn't in the base? However, after thinking about it for a moment, Mo thought of 2 possibilities. Since that chivalrous man often had to command these psychokinesis, then he couldn't stay outside the base. The reason why his telekinesis couldn't detect them was because they were hiding underground. Now, Mo's telekinesis could penetrate buildings. But there was a limit. If they hid dozens of meters underground, his telekinesis couldn't penetrate. And in the entire base there were 2 such places. One was an emergency shelter. At first, the emergency shelter was to avoid nuclear bomb attacks. The depth and thickness were naturally needless to say. The other was the laboratory. In order to prevent the virus from leaking out, the other 9 floors of the laboratory were built underground except for the 1 floor on the ground. Mo wasn't far from the laboratory at this time. He immediately tapped his feet lightly. In a moment he had already arrived outside the laboratory door. Without any hesitation he was about to blast open the laboratory door. However, at this moment, roar! In the laboratory a beast-like roar came out. In the next moment the laboratory door was blasted out from inside. It smashed straight towards Mo. Mo's telekinesis moved slightly, and the door deviated from its trajectory. It flew past his side. It smashed into a tree 50 meters away. Crack! The tree immediately let out a crisp sound and was broken in the middle. At the same time, from the laboratory door, 23 tall shadows jumped out in a row. Each shadow was more than 3 meters tall. There were barbs on their shoulders. Some of their arms turned into 100-meter-long tentacles. Some of their arms turned into biochemical shields that were taller than a person. Some of their bodies were covered in thick plate armor. They were all mutated zombies. Roar! 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 The man-made mutated zombies in these laboratories were much stronger than the mutated zombies in the wilderness. Such a man-made mutated zombie could probably reach the strength of a level 10 zombie hunter. However, it was clear that Mo had underestimated the strength of these zombies. They roared furiously and charged towards Mo. Based on their speed and strength, Mo had judged that the strength of these mutated zombies was much stronger than the 2 he had seen before. Every single one of them was probably a level 8 or level 9 hunter. At the same time, a figure slowly walked out from the entrance of the laboratory. Under the moonlight, the figure was wearing a bamboo hat. He crossed his arms in front of his chest. In his arms was a long and narrow sword. Swordsman. He finally showed his face. At the same time, the patrol team and the corpse hunting team in Area A heard the commotion and rushed over. When they saw more than 20 mutated zombies, they were all dumbfounded. In the past, when a mutant zombie ran out of the laboratory, they couldn't do anything. But now, so many of them had appeared. Wouldn't it be over if the hunting group didn't come over as soon as possible? But just as they were panicking, the hunting group had already arrived. The leader, Xueqi, saw the situation at the entrance of the laboratory. He also saw Mo. But tonight, Mo was different from before. In the past, Mo always gave people a feeling of being calm and natural, standing aloof from worldly affairs. But tonight, Mo seemed to have an incomparably dense murderous aura. Under this strong murderous aura, Mo didn't seem to have any intention of hiding. He seemed to want everyone to know that if they provoked him, they would die. Seeing this, Xueqi waved his hand to the group members who had rushed over behind him. He signaled them to step back. All the group members were stunned. More than 20 mutated zombies ran out and they didn't care? What's more, these zombies were rushing towards the figure under the moonlight. They didn't want to save this person? Xueqi stared at the group members and said, "That person, it won't be a problem to deal with these zombies." Everyone was stunned. Was this a joke? Their hunting group might not be able to deal with more than 20 man-made mutated zombies. That person could do it? How could they understand the leader's painstaking efforts? In the eyes of the leader, Xueqi, the mysterious strong man Immortal, was full of violent murderous aura. It was likely that he would attack with all his strength. With Immortal's strength, if he attacked with all his strength, just the aftermath alone could easily kill the hunting group members. If these group members really went up, wouldn't they be courting death? At this time, those mutated zombies, when more than 20 meters in front of Immortal, actually separated and formed a circle. They surrounded Immortal in the middle. The zombies even began to talk about tactics. But they didn't immediately attack Immortal. Instead, they stood quietly. They seemed to be waiting for some order. The swordsman spoke. His voice was changed and it was very hoarse. It was as if he had smoked too much. "I knew you would find out sooner or later, but I didn't expect it to be so fast." As expected of the mysterious strong man, Immortal's murderous eyes looked coldly at the swordsman at the door of the laboratory. The swordsman saw that Immortal didn't speak, so he spoke again. "These mutated zombies, each of them has reached the strength of a level 9 hunter. And one of them has reached the strength of a level 10 hunter. I didn't have the chance to test their combat strength before, but today I met you, the mysterious strong man, so I can test it." Then he waved his hand. The 23 mutated zombies suddenly roared. They all rushed towards Immortal. The weapons in their hands, sharp blades, claws, spears, whips, tentacles. Almost at the same time they attacked Immortal. Every weapon that was thrown out carried unparalleled power, and the sound of wind whistling could be heard. Xueqi, who was in the distance, saw the attacks of these mutated zombies and couldn't help but tremble. The group members behind him all felt a chill in their hearts. If it were them, they wouldn't even be able to take one hit from such an attack. The speed was too fast and the strength was too strong. As the figure said, they had reached the strength of a level 9 hunter. One of them had even reached the strength of a level 10 hunter. It held a 3-meter-long giant sword in its hand. In just one step it came in front of Immortal. The giant sword in its hand was like thunder. It slashed towards Immortal. This time the power was extremely terrifying. When the sword was in the air, there was a faint flame. It was conceivable that if it hit, even a level 10 hunter might not be able to withstand it. The members of the hunting group in the distance were all shocked by what they saw. These mutated zombies were too strong. If their hunting group went up, they would probably be wiped out today. However, the giant sword in the hand of the mutated zombie had just reached Immortal. Rip! There was a crisp sound and blood splattered. The mutated zombie with the giant sword was instantly torn into several pieces. Its huge head spun in the air. Chapter 89. Rip! There was a crisp sound of cloth being torn apart. The mutated zombie that was as strong as a level 10 hunter was torn into pieces in an instant. Blood splattered under the moonlight. The light reflected off the blood was a wine-red color. The members of the hunter group gasped when they saw this scene from afar. Someone said, "This is the mysterious powerhouse. It really is the mysterious powerhouse. I think I know him. He's Immortal from our zombie farm in Area A." The members of the hunter group who had been to Base C9 before, even if they knew that Immortal was the mysterious powerhouse, couldn't help but gasp. The last time they saw this scene, they were at the entrance of the hunter group's headquarters. But the strongest person that the mysterious powerhouse tore apart was only a level 5 hunter. But now he could use his telekinesis to tear apart mutated zombies that were as strong as level 10 hunters. In other words, all hunters below level 10 including level 10 hunters. In front of him, they were all ants that he could tear apart easily. The mysterious powerhouse's strength was insane. At the entrance of the laboratory, Vigilante was stunned when he saw this scene. The strength of the mysterious powerhouse's telekinesis was far beyond his imagination. However, there was no panic in his eyes. Instead, he looked at Immortal with interest. In the next moment, the 22 mutated zombies came to within 5 meters of Immortal at almost the same time. Their weapons were less than half a meter away from Immortal. But, rip! Almost at the same time, all 22 mutated zombies were torn into pieces. Broken limbs flew and blood splattered. At the same time, along with the flying pieces, 22 clouds of dark green smoke exploded around Immortal. Bang 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 bang. In just a moment, Immortal was enveloped by the smoke. Vigilante's hoarse voice came from the entrance of the laboratory. I knew that you would tear these zombies apart in your anger. So, except for the first mutated zombie, every other mutated zombie was stuffed with more than 10 strong anesthetic bullets. Even a level 10 hunter wouldn't last more than 3 seconds under so many tranquilizer bullets. What do you think of the effect? Everyone in the hunter group saw this scene from afar. They were all worried for the mysterious powerhouse. The man and woman from base C2 were easily taken care of by a single anesthetic bullet. Now, with 22 anesthetic bullets, even the mysterious powerhouse would die. After all, anesthetic bullets were originally developed to deal with hunters and psychokinesis. Although they didn't know who the person at the entrance of the laboratory was, he was definitely not a good person to release so many mutated zombies to deal with the mysterious powerhouse. And if something happened to the mysterious powerhouse, who could deal with him? However, a moment later, when the large cloud of dark green smoke was blown by a gust of wind, everyone's gazes focused. Under the moonlight, Immortal's figure stood there. He was motionless. Killing intent spread out from his body. At the entrance of the laboratory, seeing this, the chivalrous man's eyes finally revealed a trace of panic. He thought of all kinds of accidents. But he didn't expect that the mysterious powerhouse wasn't even afraid of anesthetic bullets. One had to know that these strong anesthetic bullets had been specially processed. The amount of drugs in each anesthetic bullet was enough to easily anesthetize a level 10 hunter. Now, with 22 anesthetic bullets, the mysterious powerhouse didn't show any signs of being anesthetized. This was simply inhuman. Of course, he didn't know that Immortal had a recovery potion. The recovery potion was extremely effective. It could restore stamina, heal wounds, and remove toxins in one. It could even beautify the skin, delay aging, remove crow's feet, and remove melasma. Even if he was hit by so many anesthetic bullets, he only needed a bottle of recovery potion. He would recover in a moment. At this moment, Immortal's telekinesis spread out. It pressed down on the vigilante. However, he found something strange when his telekinesis pressed down. This person's body was emitting a strange telekinesis that resisted Immortal's pressure. At the same time, the long sword in his hand was unsheathed. He used his telekinesis to control this long and narrow sword and stabbed it toward Immortal. Although there was only one long sword, it gave people the feeling that it was 100 times sharper than the other psychokinesis flying knives. Under the moonlight, the long sword flashed coldly. Almost instantly, it was in front of Immortal. Immortal had already detected that the telekinesis output from this person's brain was at most level 5 psychokinesis. But under his bamboo hat was a special metal ring. And with the help of this metal ring, this person's telekinesis was greatly enhanced. Could actually reach level 9 or even level 10. Immortal had heard the people in the laboratory talk about the brainwave amplification device, when he had nothing to do. It seemed that this metal ring was that thing. That person's eyes were filled with determination. That long sword, under the control of his level 10 telekinesis, was extremely fast. It even broke through the speed of sound and created a sonic boom. Seeing this scene, the hunters in the distance all sucked in a breath of cold air. If that sword attacked them, none of them would be able to block it. Even the genetic martial arts of the hunters would not be able to. However, Immortal only retracted his telekinesis. The telekinesis that had spread to a diameter of 2,000 meters suddenly gathered into a beam. It went straight for the chivalrous man. Just imagine, a huge amount of telekinesis within a diameter of 2,000 meters was gathered together at this moment. How terrifying would that be? Under the impact of this torrent-like telekinesis, that long sword that seemed to be able to split mountains and seas was almost instantly broken into more than a dozen pieces. And each piece was crushed into scrap metal by the huge telekinesis. The torrent-like telekinesis continued to rush forward. Seeing this, the chivalrous man's expression changed. He originally thought that by using the brainwave amplification device and forcefully raising his telekinesis to level 10, he would be able to fight against the mysterious expert. In the end, he realized that his thoughts were simply laughable, although they were both level 10. But telekinesis of the same level was also divided into strong and weak. How could his telekinesis, which was forcefully raised, be compared to Immortal's telekinesis that was strengthened through the brain cell enhancer? How could a firefly compete with the bright moon? Emosher's torrent-like telekinesis actually blasted on his body as if it was solid. That person was instantly sent flying. He directly crashed into the laboratory door and through several walls behind him. Out of the laboratory. He flew more than 300 meters away. Only then did he fall to the ground. A cloud of blood mist suddenly spat out from his mouth. He was extremely shocked. Telekinesis could actually have such a powerful impact. But in the next moment, the shock in his eyes turned into pain. Extreme pain. In the past, when Emosher dealt with psychokinesis, he only suppressed their telekinesis back into their bodies. But this time he directly crushed this person's telekinesis. Suppression and crushing were two completely different concepts. Suppression meant that although the telekinesis was suppressed back into the body, it was still intact. And crushing meant that Emosher's telekinesis directly rushed into the other party's brain. It destroyed the other party's brain cells that could produce telekinesis. It forcibly destroyed this person's telekinesis. 300 meters away, that person only felt a buzzing sound in his brain. In the next moment, there was an intense pain in his head. It was so painful that he couldn't stand up at all. He held his head with both hands, kept rolling, twisting and screaming. Emosher moved his telekinesis, lifted this person up and moved him in front of him. His eyes looked straight at this person. In his cold eyes, murderous intent was revealed. Even in extreme pain, that person could feel that he was enveloped by murderous intent. He said with difficulty, "No, don't kill me. I mean no harm." Crack. Emosher moved his telekinesis. The bamboo hat on his head was directly torn into two pieces and flew far away. Under the bamboo hat, a face appeared. A woman. This woman was very beautiful. She had cherry lips, slender legs and a ponytail. In the distance, a few people in the hunting group saw this face and couldn't help but exclaim, "Captain Ma." Chapter 90. Under the moonlight. The person who was suspended in the air by Emosher's telekinesis had his large bamboo hat torn off. The next moment, a woman's face was revealed. It was a very beautiful face. The most eye-catching thing was that after her bamboo hat fell off, her ponytailed hair fell down from the back of her head. Seeing this scene, a member of the hunting group suddenly exclaimed, "That's right. Leader Ma." This person turned out to be Ma Wei, Leader Ma, who had pretended to be a mysterious powerhouse a few years ago. She was seen through and left the base later. Her nickname was Sister Ponytail. Recognizing Sister Ponytail, the members of the hunting group were all in disbelief. Leader Ma had left for several years. She was alone in the wilderness. Everyone thought that she had died a long time ago. They did not expect that she would appear in the base's laboratory. And she had such powerful strength. She could even control mutated zombies. But why did she want to be an enemy of the mysterious powerhouse? Everyone racked their brains but could not figure this out. Only Emosher was a little surprised. As early as the moment he saw this mysterious powerhouse, his telekinesis had already detected that it was a woman. He just did not expect this woman to be Sister Ponytail. However, no matter who it was, if they dared to provoke him, there would only be one outcome: death. At this moment, Sister Ponytail was still holding her head in pain and struggling. She said with difficulty, "Wait, don't kill me. I have something to say." However, in the next moment, she felt that her mind was blank. There was no fear in her eyes. There was only the constant pain in her head. At this moment, she had become an idiot without any intelligence. Emosher would not give her any chance. He would not talk nonsense with her, not even a word. No matter what reason you had, since you almost killed Happy, your ending was already set. As for what you had to say, there was no need. Emosher checked Sister Ponytail's memory in his mind. It turned out that after Sister Ponytail left the base, she wandered alone in the wilderness. At that time she was a level 4 psychokinesis. When she encountered mutated beasts and mutated zombies, she could deal with them. Over time, through continuous fighting, her telekinesis quickly increased and reached level 5. Furthermore, her psychokinesis had mutated. The mutated psychokinesis could stimulate other people's brain cells and cause them to suffer from psychokinesis. This was also the reason why Emosher noticed a lot of psychokinesis tonight. At the same time, she could also control the thoughts of the person whose psychokinesis was triggered by her. Psychokinesis that Emosher had found out about was naturally controlled by her. After obtaining these abilities, she felt that these abilities would be useful to the base, so she quietly returned to the base and found her uncle, Chief Ma Yangsher. At that time, Ma Yangsher was preparing to restart Project X, and Project X required the use of psychokinesis. He arranged for her to enter the laboratory. Now, Project X had been preliminarily completed. With her powerful telekinesis, she could already control these man-made mutant zombies. It was also at this time that her uncle, Ma Yangshi, told her to take care of the mysterious expert. Uncle didn't say why, but she could guess what her uncle meant. He remembered that more than 10 years ago, when the residents of E District were in chaos, they had once extracted the blood of a mysterious powerhouse. After laboratory research, they found that the genes in the blood had a lot of powerful abilities. Powerful self-healing ability, terrifying strength, and even the ability to regenerate broken limbs. Especially the ability to restrain Virus X. As for beautifying and delaying aging, it was needless to say. At that time, her uncle had said that if they could obtain more blood of the mysterious powerhouse for research, then the genes of the entire base's human population could be upgraded to a higher level. Everyone would be as powerful as the mysterious powerhouse. At that time, it would be easy to restore the human civilization of the past. It was just that they searched openly and secretly, but the mysterious powerhouse never showed up. Until recently, when Lu Nian's incident happened, Lu Nian and his subordinates were torn apart one by one. At that time, everyone below the stage was shocked beyond words. Immortal was the only one who looked calm. His uncle was on the stage and saw it clearly, so he guessed a little. Plus, the gym and other places where the mysterious powerhouse first appeared, most of them were around the corpses. He was finally sure that Immortal was the mysterious powerhouse. Originally, he wanted to discuss with Immortal to see if he could contribute some of his own blood. But after so many years, with his understanding of the mysterious powerhouse would not casually contribute blood. So, he had to come up with this plan. Previously, when Little Doe was shot, she actually wanted to attack Immortal and get some of Immortal's blood. When the mutated zombie escaped from the laboratory, it was also her uncle Ma Yangshi who asked her to do it. The purpose was also for the blood. As long as it was an enhanced version of the zombie, even if it only made a small cut on Immortal's body, it would be of great help to their research. Later, when the zombie almost bit Happy, it was also arranged by Ma Yangshi. That zombie was actually not an ordinary zombie. It was a zombie that had been enhanced by the X2 virus. But the focus of the enhancement was on its claws. So it could not be seen from the outside. But the people they arranged made a mistake in the zombie room. Originally, they tampered with Immortal's zombie room, but mistakenly tampered with Happy's zombie room, which led to Happy being bitten. All of this was the cause of the matter. After Immortal finished checking these memories, he only felt a slight headache. Previously, after he plundered those people's memories, he only checked the memories of the past few months. So he did not feel uncomfortable. But this Miss Ponytail was a key figure, so he naturally had to check all of her memories. In a short period of time, he had checked so many memories, in addition to the memories of many others he had checked before. It was inevitable that he would feel dizzy. He took out a bottle of brain cell recovery medicine and drank it. He immediately felt that his headache had eased a lot. Then he ignored Miss Ponytail, who had become an idiot. He turned around, tapped his feet lightly, and walked towards the corpse farm. Behind him, Miss Ponytail, whose IQ was infinitely close to 0, was still holding her head and wailing. But soon she would not be in pain anymore. Bang, there was a muffled sound. Her head exploded into a cloud of blood under the moonlight. No matter what reason you have, since you have already caused harm to Happy, then you should be prepared to die. Don't say that it's pardonable, don't say that you have become an idiot to forgive her. Forgiving her is God's business. My mission is to send her to see God. In the distance, the members of the body hunters saw Immortal leave. They thought that he had let Miss Ponytail go. They immediately walked towards Miss Ponytail. However, just as they took a few steps, Miss Ponytail's head suddenly exploded. Everyone was shocked. They did not know what Immortal had seen from Miss Ponytail's memories. They only knew that Captain Ma had already said that there was a reason for all of this. In the end, Immortal did not even bother to listen to a word. He directly exploded Captain Ma's head. The viciousness and mercilessness of the mysterious expert was once again deeply imprinted in everyone's hearts. If there was nothing, it was better not to provoke the mysterious expert. Even if there was something, they could not provoke him. Because they would not even have the chance to explain. Chapter 91. After Immortal killed Sister Ponytail, he went straight to the corpse farm. The mastermind was Ma Yangshi. Then there was only one end for him. Behind him, the members of the hunting group saw Immortal heading towards the corpse field. They all looked at each other in disbelief. In the end, everyone's eyes fell on Guiju Tao, the leader. Although Guojutao's words and actions were feminine, he really took on the responsibility of a leader since he became the leader. And he did a good job. So, everyone was quite convinced by him. At this time in this situation, they naturally waited for Guojutao to make a decision. Guojutao frowned. Logically speaking, in this case he should chase after him. What if the mysterious strongman killed others? Although he couldn't stop him from killing people, he should at least know the reason. It would be easier to explain to the people in the base. However, the mysterious strongman was full of murderous intent. If he followed him, he might annoy him. As long as he wanted to, it would be too late to escape. Who dared to go up? Wasn't that courting death? But as the leader, even if he was going to die, he had to bite the bullet. At least he should go and ask why Immortal killed people. He used to be the deputy leader of the corpse hunting team in Area A. He knew a little about Immortal. Immortal wouldn't kill people for no reason. Thinking of this, he said to the others, "I'll go first. You follow me from a distance. Without my order, no one should act rashly." But at this time, a person walked out of the crowd. It was Du Xiaodo, the leader of the first team. He said, "Leader, let me go. I probably know the reason." "Ha!" Guojutao turned around and looked at Du Xiaodo in surprise. "Xiaodo, you?" He went to see Xiaodo during the day. At that time, Xiaodo even had difficulty breathing. The doctor said that Xiaodo couldn't get out of bed at all for a month. Why did he suddenly appear in front of him now? Moreover, he looked even healthier than himself. Not only Guojutao. The other members also widened their eyes in shock. They looked at Du Xiaodo in disbelief. "Leader Xiaodo, why are you?" Du Xiaodo didn't wait for them to finish and said, "It's the mysterious strongman." Everyone suddenly understood. If it was a mysterious expert, then there was nothing to be surprised about. Ever since the mysterious expert had appeared, he had given people too many surprises. Until now they were somewhat numb. It seemed that no matter what happened to the mysterious expert, they would not be surprised. Even if you say that the mysterious elite is a mutant, a superhuman, and has been injected with the super soldier serum, you will never be able to believe it. They wouldn't even find it strange if he had the genes of a giant dragon. On the contrary, he felt that it was more logical. However, they would never have guessed that Immortal really had giant dragon genes. Xiaodo continued. "I know a little about this. Someone wants to harm him. I was shot, the mutant zombie escaped from the lab, and the zombie in the graveyard broke free from its chains. All of these were targeted at him. I think he has already found out who the murderer is." When everyone heard this, they were all secretly shocked. Just who was it that had eaten the heart of a bear and the guts of a leopard to actually dare to harm the mysterious expert? Little Bean looked in the direction of the corpse farm and said, "He came to find me during the day. I believe that he wouldn't kill someone for no reason. So, I think it's better for me to go with you and ask. The rest of you can stay far away." Commander Guojutao pondered for a moment and said in a slightly feminine voice, "That's it then." Then the two of them ran towards the corpse farm together. Dozens of seconds later, they had already arrived at the entrance of the corpse farm. They looked into the courtyard. Under the moonlight, Immortal, dressed in black, looked like the god of death who was about to harvest lives. He stood in the courtyard and stared at a room in the courtyard. After a moment, the door opened. A figure slowly walked out from the crowd. Xiaodo and Guojutao both recognized the figure. The former chief of the base, Ma Yangshi. However, the old chief at this time seemed to have aged 10 years. His figure was also a little hunched. He no longer had the demeanor of a chief. He slowly walked into the courtyard and faced Immortal, who was like the god of death. After a moment, he sighed and shook his head. "You know everything." Immortal was speechless. Only the murderous intent in his eyes could be seen. Ma Yangshi nodded. "Yes, all of this was instigated by me. I resigned and came to the corpse farm because of you. The one who shot Xiaodo was actually aimed at you. Xiaodo was just too unlucky and ran into the gun. The mutated zombie in the lab escaped because of you. The zombie in the corpse farm broke free from the chains because of you. But there was a small mistake and they got into the wrong room. That was why I almost became a zombie. I am deeply sorry for this." When the two people outside the door heard this, they were extremely shocked. What was Chief Ma saying? He was the one who instigated all of this? How was this possible? Chief Ma's words completely overturned their worldview. Chief Ma had always been a positive person in their hearts. He could even be said to be a great person. Without Chief Ma, there would be no Base C1. Without Chief Ma, everyone in Base C1 would have either died or become zombies. But at this moment, such a person personally said that he was the one who instigated all of this. The psychological impact of this was too great. While he was shocked, Guojutao thought of something. He waved at his subordinates in the distance. He knew that this matter was of great importance. He had to let everyone know. And not only did he have to let them know, he had to let them hear it with their own ears. Otherwise, even if he told them, they would not believe him. Soon those people rushed over. Guojutao thought of something again and immediately reached into his shirt pocket. At the same time, Old Li and Happy were also awakened by the commotion. The two of them heard someone talking in the yard. Out of curiosity, they gently opened the window a little. Under the moonlight in the yard, Emosher was still speechless. He was waiting for Ma Yangshi to continue. Although the moment Ma Yangshi targeted him, the outcome was already decided. But for a person like Ma Yangshi who had worked hard and contributed a lot, such a big boss behind the scenes, he was willing to give him a chance to leave behind his last words. Ma Yangshi did not seem to see the people outside the corpse farm at all. He continued, but all of these are necessary sacrifices. It is impossible to restore human civilization without sacrifices. So I don't regret it. Then he turned his head and looked at one of his row of corpses. There was a hint of gentleness in his eyes. He continued. That year you were injured when you saved those people in the residential area of Xueqi. We extracted a few drops of your blood. After studying it, we found that your blood is very powerful. I plan to ask for a few more drops of your blood. As long as we studied your blood thoroughly, we believed that we could create more psychokinesis and hunters as powerful as you. But no matter how we searched, you refused to show up. We had no choice but to do this. Chapter 92. Under the moonlight, Ma Yangshi's figure was no longer tall. He looked a bit thin. He sighed and said, Unfortunately, if you showed up earlier, we could have a good talk. Maybe you wouldn't be so hostile towards me. Then, the entire human civilization might be able to reappear soon. At this moment, Emosher finally opened his mouth. One drop of blood is not enough, you want a few more. If a few drops of blood is not enough, do you want all of my flesh and blood? Ma Yangshi did not deny. He said, If all of your flesh and blood can be exchanged for the restoration of the entire human civilization, then I won't rule out doing so. Emosher said coldly, You sound so noble, don't you have any selfishness? The zombie you secretly raised for more than 20 years, is it your wife? Maybe her body also has my blood. Ma Yangshi smiled bitterly and nodded. Of course there aren't many people in this world who don't have selfishness. I'm also just a mortal. Hearing this, everyone felt like they were struck by lightning. Raising a zombie for more than 20 years? This news made everyone feel like their whole world was about to be turned upside down. After the base was established, Chief Ma once drafted the base basic law. The basic law is the code of conduct for everyone in the base. One of the rules is, it is strictly forbidden to raise zombies privately, violators will be killed without mercy. Although strict, zombies are extremely dangerous. If they are raised privately, if they get infected, the entire base will be finished. So for this rule, the people who have suffered from zombies are all in favor. But who would have thought that Chief Ma was actually raising zombies privately? And he raised them for more than 20 years. Who would have thought that the person who made the law would be the first to break the law? Ma Yangshi smiled bitterly and said calmly, Xiaomin is my wife. Unfortunately, she was infected after the virus broke out. But although she became a zombie, I couldn't bear to leave her. So I kept her. Your blood has a strong restraining effect on the X virus. This gave me hope. Although zombies look like walking corpses, after our research we found that the zombie's body is not dead, it's just that their cells are suppressed by the virus, so it's like they are dead. I fused your blood with Little Min's and found that Little Min's blood has regained its activity. That's why I want to borrow your blood. This is also an important reason. Emosher said coldly. Are you sure you can recover your memories if your body recovers? Ma Yangshi shook his head. I don't know, but we have to try. Emosher's voice was cold. So, you want me to sacrifice myself to save all of mankind and save your wife? Ma Yangshi said, If it were me, I would do the same. Emosher's eyes were cold as he spat out 4 words. I'm not you. Ma Yangshi nodded and smiled bitterly. I know. Therefore they could only resort to this method. Unfortunately, he failed in the end. Sighing, he slowly said, I only have one last request. Emosher was speechless. Ma Yangshi said, I know that there's only one outcome for what I've done to you. But, can I choose how I die? Emosher didn't say anything. Ma Yangshi nodded slowly at Emosher. Thank you. Then he turned around and slowly walked to the zombie room where his wife was locked up. As he walked, he sighed. Xueqi is a good child, but unfortunately, I've let you down. As he spoke, tears flashed in his eyes. When he arrived at the door of the zombie room, he took out the key that he kept close to him like a treasure and opened the door. At this moment, he seemed to have become much more relaxed. It was as if he had put down the heavy burden that he had carried for decades. In the room, his wife, the female zombie, saw the human appear. She immediately roared, bared her teeth, and waved her claws, wanting to pounce over. The iron chains rattled as they were pulled. Ma Yangshi put a collar around his neck and fastened the iron chain to the collar. Everyone finally knew what he was going to do. A few members of the hunting group had already walked into the courtyard and called out, "Chief! Chief, don't! Mysterious powerhouse, can you let the chief go?" Old Lee and Happy's door had also been opened. The two of them came to the courtyard. "Chief!" Old Lee's eyes flashed. Happy held Emoshire's hand tightly. However, Emoshire was unmoved. Ma Yangshi turned around and said to Guojutao, "Xueqi, send us to the laboratory tomorrow. The laboratory hasn't received a new zombie that has just been transformed for a long time. I should be able to help." "Chief!" Guojutao's voice was already choked with sobs. But Ma Yangshi ignored him. He turned his head and looked at the female zombie. His gaze became gentle. He said softly, "Xiaomin, it's been more than 20 years. We can finally be together." As he said that, he took a step forward with a smile on his face. "Roar!" The female zombie immediately grabbed his hand and pulled him over. She opened her mouth and bit his neck. Blood immediately gushed out. When the female zombie saw the blood, she became even more violent. She kept shaking her head left and right, biting Ma Yangshi like a wild dog biting its prey. Ma Yangshi did not resist. He just endured the pain and fixed the other end of his chain into the iron buckle on the wall. Then he hugged the female zombie tightly. No matter how hard the female zombie tried to bite his neck, he didn't care. Blood splattered. It was unbearable to watch. Everyone was silent. After a while, Ma Yangshi's eyes gradually turned gray. There was a final smile on his face. He turned his head and looked at everyone. "Goodbye." In the next moment, he suddenly pounced on everyone. A beast-like roar came from his throat. Roar, roar. The two zombies, one male and one female, kept pouncing on everyone as if they had gone mad. The chains behind them rattled as they were pulled. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. They could not come back to their senses for a long time. Only then did the murderous aura on Emoshire slowly fade away. Looking at the two zombies in the zombie recovery room, he subconsciously held Happy's cold hand tightly. The moon hung high in the sky. It reflected this gloomy world. The next day, the hunting group asked for Emoshire's opinion. They announced everything that happened last night. When everyone heard the news, besides being shocked, they also found it hard to believe. They did not believe that Chief Ma was such a person. However, the leader of the hunting group, Guojutao, took out a recording pen. Last night, he knew that people would not believe it, so he had already recorded the conversation between Chief Ma and Emoshire. Once the recording was released, people were still in shock, but they had to believe it. In the end, they followed Chief Ma's last words and sent him and his wife to the laboratory. Emoshire felt a little complicated. Such a person had always wanted to harm him, so he naturally deserved to die. However, this was not the ending he wanted to see. Was what he had done right or wrong? However, he only hesitated for a long time. After half a day, he thought it through. In the apocalypse, survival was the way to go. What nobility! What selfless sacrifice! All of that was courting death. This matter was over. Next, Emoshire planned to go to Base C2. It was only about 100 kilometers away from the Dragon Ruins. He wanted to see if he could sign in there. Since the system was able to give him such a map, the items he signed in the Draconic Ruins must be extraordinary. Chapter 93. Now, Emoshire's identity had been made public in Base C1. Old Lee was naturally very surprised and couldn't come back to his senses for an entire day. Happy was very happy. Although she had long guessed that Emoshire was a mysterious elite, she felt as if a stone had been lifted from her heart when she received confirmation this time. Moreover, Brother Emo was so powerful. How could she not be happy? As for the others, no one dared to approach Emoshire. He had killed so many people in one night, including Regiment Commander Ma and Chief Ma. Who would dare to approach him? As for talking about him, they didn't even dare to. In the eyes of the people, talking about such a mysterious elite was equivalent to courting death. Although some people were secretly unhappy that Emoshire had killed Regiment Commander Ma and forced Chief Ma to his death, But that was only in the dark. In the face of such a mysterious elite, they didn't dare to say a word. Occasionally people would see Immortal on the road, but they would either stay far away from him or stand by the side. Otherwise they would stand by the roadside and wait for Immortal to pass by before quickly leaving. Immortal didn't care about any of this. No one came to disturb him, and he was happy with the peace and quiet. Of course, most people were still grateful to Immortal. Immortal was cruel and merciless, but he had saved the base so many times. If it wasn't for Immortal, they would have become zombies long ago. Among them, the one who was most grateful to Immortal was Yang Kong. Now Yang Kong couldn't do strenuous exercise. He had become an ordinary person. However, the gratitude in his heart towards Immortal had never changed. When he found out that the mysterious elite was Immortal, he took 2 bottles of Xueqi wine that he had kept for more than 20 years and went to the zombie farm. Although he was just an ordinary person, he wasn't as afraid as the others when facing Immortal. Immortal, Audi, and Yang Kong finished the 2 bottles of wine. Audi and Yang Kong were already drunk and hazy. Happy was worried that Immortal would feel uncomfortable when he was drunk. But when she saw that Immortal didn't seem drunk at all, she was relieved. Since Immortal had found out all the facts, the 2 people from base C2 were no longer a suspect. However, guild leader Xueqi did not let them leave immediately. This was because the mysterious expert Immortal had instructed them not to let them leave. In a few days he would go to base C2 with them. That night after midnight, Immortal spoke in his mind. System, sign in. The system's voice quickly sounded. Sign in successful. Sign in event. Killed mutated psychokinesis Ma Wei. Investigate the truth. Sign in reward. Blood demon's eyes upgrade. Psychic blessing. Leader's will. Dragon breath pearl. Immortal was a little excited when he saw that there were so many rewards. 2 events and 4 rewards. This was the first time. He carefully examined the rewards. The first 3 were all skills. After the upgrade, the blood demon's eye could directly identify the level of any creature. Telekinesis blessing was the same as Sister Ponytail's skill. It could be used to activate other people's telekinesis. The leader's will could control these people whose telekinesis was activated. In other words, the system rewarded all the abilities that Sister Ponytail obtained after her telekinesis mutated to Immortal. In the end, Immortal focused his attention on the Dragon Breath Pearl. It was a translucent pearl the size of a walnut. He could see the fiery red flames inside the pearl. And if he looked closer, he would find that this flame was in the shape of a dragon. A line of words appeared on the pearl. Frowny face. Dragon Breath Pearl. Automatically activates when life is in danger. Creates the shadow of a flaming dragon and spits out flaming dragon breath. Can instantly kill any enemy below level 10 hunter. Note, can be used repeatedly. When Immortal saw this, he couldn't help but smile. He planned to leave the base, but he was worried about Happy. With this Dragon Breath Pearl, even level 10 hunters, strong mutated zombies, and mutated beasts wouldn't be able to harm Happy. However, Immortal was still worried about this. That afternoon he brought over a Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer and injected it into Happy. He hoped that she could become a corpse hunter. After all, the Dragon Breath Pearl was dead, but humans were alive. If she had some ability to protect herself, it would be much better than the Dragon Breath Pearl. However, to Immortal's surprise, after Happy was injected, there was no change. He then tried another brain cell enhancer, but there was still no change. He could clearly sense with his telekinesis that after the medicine entered Happy's body and circulated once, it had no effect and was expelled through her sweat pores. Immortal found it strange. In his opinion, the gene enhancer produced by the system was very effective. It should be useful to anyone. But he didn't expect that even the gene enhancer produced by the system couldn't stimulate Happy's potential. After that, he tried to bless Happy with his telekinesis. Happy still didn't react. Immortal was speechless. Could it be that Happy was the legendary trash? Such a beautiful girl shouldn't be like that. Since he couldn't figure it out, Immortal didn't think too much about it. Over the next 2 days he signed in and received 20 recovery potions. He gave these recovery potions to Happy and told her to drink a bottle if she was injured. Happy was a little puzzled. She stared at Immortal with a pair of expressive eyes. Immortal explained, "Happy, I have to go to base C2 for some time." Happy was stunned. She couldn't bear for Brother Imo to leave. However, she was very sensible. She knew that Brother Imo must have something important to do there. She didn't ask much. She just looked at Immortal with concern as if saying, "Brother Imo, you must take good care of yourself when you go there alone." Immortal chuckled and rubbed Happy's head. He said, "Don't worry." Then he took out the dragon breath pearl and handed it to Happy. He told her what it was for and asked her to keep it with her. Happy's eyes flickered. She was reluctant to part with him, but she was also happy. Before Brother Emo left, he had done so many things for her. It meant that he had her in his heart. However, while she was happy, she couldn't help but be worried. Brother Emo was so powerful, but she was just an ordinary person. She was even a mute girl who couldn't even be considered an ordinary person. She wasn't worthy of Brother Emo at all. "Alright, it's getting late. Rest early." As Emoshir spoke, he got up and was about to leave. However, at this moment, Happy suddenly came over. Her lips touched Emoshir's face lightly. Then she seemed to be a little scared herself. She retreated in a panic. Her heart was pounding like a crazy deer. The blush on her face had already spread to her neck. His heart was filled with apprehension and fear. She didn't mean to do that just now. It was just that when she looked at Brother Mo's face, that impulse suddenly rose in her heart. She couldn't help but move closer. Oh no, will Brother Emo be angry? She wanted to apologize to Brother Emo, but she couldn't muster up the courage. Just as she was feeling nervous, she felt a gentle hand reach out to the top of her head. He gently rubbed it twice. At the same time, Brother Mo's voice sounded. "Happy, you've learned bad things." Chapter 94. Emoshir was a little surprised that he was kissed by force, but he understood. Sometimes people would have the urge to kiss the person they liked. This was a biological instinct. It was a very natural thing. Although Happy was a more reserved girl, when she knew that she was about to leave, she could not help but have this impulse because she was reluctant to part with him. Emoshir touched the part of his face that seemed to still have a trace of warmth, and a happy smile appeared on his face. On the third day, the man and woman from Base C2 were released. The leader of the hunting group, Xueqi, smiled apologetically to the two of them. "The matter has been investigated. The two of you are innocent. I'm sorry for making you suffer." The woman in leather, Xueqi, was indignant. But at this time she did not dare to say anything. Now she already understood that psychokinesis was not omnipotent. Level 4 psychokinesis was not enough to run rampant. If something went wrong and she was hit with another strong anesthetic bomb, she would have to suffer again. Hao Rin, on the other hand, had a smile on his face. He waved his hand and said, it's okay. I can understand. You're investigating a case. This is what you should do." Xueqi followed Emoshir's instructions and said to the two of them, "You said that Base C2 doesn't have a laboratory or a corpse-raising room. Then our base will send 2 technical talents to you. One is a laboratory researcher, and the other is a corpse-raising person in the corpse-raising field." Then he called the researcher and Emoshir over. The man and woman had been locked up for a few days, so they did not know that Emoshir was the mysterious powerhouse. Emoshir did not intend to reveal his true identity on this trip to Base C2. He still enjoyed the feeling of hiding behind the scenes and quietly becoming stronger. Moreover, it was hard to know what was in a person's heart. Who knew if other people had good intentions? He was already so strong, but Ma Yangshi still dared to harm him. The two of them were naturally very surprised that Base C2 could send them technical talents. The indignation in their hearts lessened a lot. Emoshir and the others were about to leave Base C1. Not many people came to send them off. Xueqi looked into Emoshir's eyes and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll help you take care of Happy and Old Lee." Emoshir nodded. "Thank you very much." Happy stared at Emoshir while he stood by the side. There were faint tears in his eyes. Emoshir went to Happy's side and comforted him. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon." Happy nodded. She was very sensible and would not force Brother Emo to stay. She looked at Emoshir with her watery eyes. It was as if they were saying, "Brother Emo, come back early." Emoshir patted Happy's head and messed up her hair. He said, "Let's go back." Then he turned around and boarded the helicopter. The helicopter's rotors began to spin as it slowly rose into the air. A cloud of dust rose from the ground. Watching Emoshir leave, Xueqi began to feel pressured in his heart. The mysterious expert left. In that case, the safety of the base would be in the hands of the hunter group. In the past, he did not feel much pressure to maintain the safety of the base. But now that the mysterious expert had left, he suddenly felt that the burden on his shoulders had become much heavier. If there was another crisis like before, he was afraid that... After the helicopter rose into the air, Hao Rin said to Emoshir with a grin, "Hey brother, what's your relationship with that girl just now?" Before Emoshir could say anything, Xueqi glared at him. Hao Ren, what do you want? Hao Ren subconsciously shrank back. He chuckled. Nothing, I just think that girl is really beautiful. Seeing Jin Shirshir's face turn cold, he quickly said, of course she's not as beautiful as you. Then he secretly winked at Immortal. Then he said to Immortal, brother, she's your friend, right? I could tell when we went to the corpse farm that day. You're really lucky. Immortal glanced at Hao Ren and replied faintly, yes. Seeing that Immortal seemed to be hostile to him, Hao Ren could not help but wave his hand and laugh. Brother, don't worry. Although I, Hao Ren, am not a good person, I'm lustful but not obscene. And I also know that I can't bully my friend's wife. You can keep your heart in your stomach. Jin Shirshir seemed to be unable to bear it anymore. She said angrily, if you don't shut your dog mouth, I'll sew it up. Hao Ren quickly shrank back and said, it's just a chat. It's just a chat. There's no need, no need. Then he turned his head and calmly flew the helicopter. Jin Shirshir, who was wearing a leather coat, snorted coldly. She leaned back in her chair. She ignored the others. Immortal was too lazy to say anything. As for the researcher sent by the laboratory, he did not say anything when he saw that the others were silent. The helicopter faced the sun and flew in the northeast direction. Base C2 was in the former Liaodongyan mountain. It was more than 1,200 kilometers away from Base C1. The fuel Hao Ren and the others brought when they came to Base C1 should be enough to last until they reached Base C2. Immortal leaned against the cabin door and looked outside. He saw that as far as his eyes could see, it was all green. Abandoned cities and lonely villages were all occupied by green plants. Immortal looked at all of this, his thoughts fluctuating. More than 20 minutes later, a cry suddenly pulled Immortal's thoughts back. Oh no, there's a flying mutant beast. The next moment. Bang, with a loud noise, the helicopter suddenly shook violently. Outside the helicopter, there was a huge human-headed bee with a length of 10 meters. This human-headed bee had 2 pairs of blood-red wings. The widest part of its wings was 15 meters. Its 6 legs were covered with barbs. At the tip of each leg there was a sharp hook-shaped spike. Under the sun, it shone with a cold light. The strangest thing was that its head was a huge human head with a diameter of half a meter. This human head had no skin and it was badly mutilated. A pair of deep eye sockets. A javelin-like mouthpart poked out of the human head's mouth. The whole thing looked disgusting and terrifying. Immortal used to think that the human-headed bees were named because their hives were shaped like human heads. But now that he saw this huge mutant human-headed bee, he finally understood. This was the real human-headed bee. He took advantage of the fact that no one noticed. His pupils suddenly turned blood red. The blood demon's eye opened. In the next moment he checked the level of this mutant human-headed bee. Species, mutant human-headed bee, level 3 strong mutant beast. After the upgrade of the blood demon's eye, he could see the strength level of any creature. This was much more convenient. Since it was a level 3 mutant beast, these 2 people would not have a problem dealing with it. Immortal naturally did not have to do anything. Hao Ren said to Jin Shirshir next to him. Jinzi, you open it. Then he turned around and said to Immortal and the researcher. Brothers, I'll show you my skills. As he said that, he directly opened the cabin door next to him. He jumped out. He hung on the landing gear of the helicopter with one hand. His right hand waved to the human-headed bee and smiled. The beauty opposite, look over here. Chapter 95. 95A Crossbow Arrow. Hao Ren hung on the helicopter landing gear with one hand. He was teasing the giant bee. The human-headed hornet seemed to be angered as well. It flapped its wings and its 2-meter-long mouthpiece stabbed straight at Hao Ren. Hao Ren gently moved his body to the side, avoiding the stab. At the same time he raised his right leg high above his head, forming a horse shape. He suddenly chopped down. Crack. The bee's mouthpiece suddenly broke. The head bee let out a miserable shriek. The poisonous needle on its tail, which was more than a meter long, was aimed straight at Hao Ren. Hao Ren smiled and said, Beautiful women like to be F***ked? As you wish. With that he moved his body to the side, avoiding the attack. At the same time he chopped down with his foot. Crack. The 1-meter-long poisonous needle suddenly broke in the middle. Black venom suddenly spurted out. Hao Ren moved his body to the side, avoiding the spurted venom. Then he kicked the bee's abdomen. Bang, there was a muffled sound. The bee's huge abdomen suddenly burst open. The 2 pairs of wings drooped down weakly and the whole huge body fell down. Hao Ren didn't seem to be satisfied. He shook his head and said, I didn't use my strength and you fell down. This won't do. Do you have any sisters? Call them out. However, before he finished speaking, on the mountain top not far away between the woods, a black mass of things flew out. There were probably hundreds of them. Looking carefully, they were all mutated bees. Each of them was about the same size as this one. Each of them had a huge human head. Hao Ren's expression changed and he shouted, "So many? Too many beautiful women, can't take it." He quickly jumped into the cabin. Zhen Shishir said angrily, "Crow's beak." Hao Ren smiled, "Zhen Zi, it's up to you." Zhen Shishir rolled her eyes at Hao Ren. He unzipped his leather jacket. There were 60 flying daggers in the leather jacket. Using his telekinesis, the flying dagger flew out and circled around the fuselage. However, the human-headed hornet seemed to know how powerful they were. It didn't fly too close. Instead, it extended its tail more than 100 meters away. Whoosh, whoosh. They actually shot out the poisonous needles from their tails. Zhen Shishir's expression changed slightly when she saw this. He hurriedly controlled the 60 flying daggers to spin around him. He blocked the poisonous needles. However, the venomous stings on the head hornets were not something that could be used once. After shooting out one needle, a new one would quickly grow out from their tails. Over 100 mutated human-headed wasps shot out over 100 poisonous stingers every time. Even Zhen Shishir, who had level 4 psychokinesis, found it difficult to resist. Seeing this, Mo sent out his telekinesis, intending to think of a way to kill these human-headed bees. However, at this moment, an urgent alarm suddenly sounded in the cabin. DDDDDD, Hao Ren looked down at the dashboard and cursed. Damn it, the fuel tank was hit. We have to land and repair it as soon as possible. Mo glanced at the ground. This was a mountainous area, so they couldn't land. More than 10 kilometers away there was a large piece of flat land. Let's go there. Mo pointed at the large piece of flat land. Hao Ren immediately controlled the helicopter and flew towards that piece of flat land. Soon the helicopter landed on that piece of flat land. Zhen Shishir quickly sent out her telekinesis to check if there were any other dangers around. Mo took advantage of the fact that her telekinesis wasn't focused on the human-headed bees. He immediately spread out his telekinesis. It was just a sweep. Bang 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 bang. Almost all of the mutated human-headed bees' heads made a muffled sound. However, when Mo triggered their brainwaves, he controlled the frequency to not be too high. So from the outside, their heads were still intact. In fact, they had exploded into a paste inside. Hundreds of mutated human-headed bees immediately fell from the sky. At the same time, Mo's mind was filled with notifications of evolution points. Killed a level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. Killed a level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. Hundreds of mutated human-headed bees allowed Mo to gain 300,000 evolution points in an instant. After a year of consumption, he had less than 6 million evolution points left. This time he should be able to replenish a lot on the way to C2 base. At this moment, the helicopter landed on a large piece of cement. Although there were weeds that were as tall as a person growing on the cement, there were also a few trees that occasionally grew. However, compared to other places, there were a lot less weeds and trees. The helicopter had just landed and Hao Ren was busy repairing the fuel tank. Zhen Shishir scanned the surroundings with her telekinesis and didn't find any danger. She immediately turned around and looked at the human-headed bees that were chasing them. But when she looked, she couldn't help but stare blankly. Chem? Hao Ren heard her doubtful voice and also looked at the sky behind the helicopter. He saw that there was nothing there. There was no human-headed bees. The few of them were all at a loss. Zhen Shishir carefully scanned the surroundings twice, but she still didn't find the human-headed bees. She frowned and shook her head. She said to Hao Ren, "Quickly fix it and leave." Hao Ren nodded, "Don't worry. Other than one thing that I'm not happy about, everything else." But just as he said this, his voice suddenly stopped. Everyone realized that something was wrong and walked to Hao Ren's side. They followed Hao Ren's gaze. They saw that there were more than 10 poison needles stuck in the helicopter. But this wasn't the main point. The main point was that the needle stuck in the fuel tank was clearly different from the other needles. The other needles were black. But this needle was copper yellow and there was even some rust on it. Hao Ren scratched his head and carefully examined the needle. He discovered that the needle was actually bronze. Hao Ren couldn't help but ask, "Are the human-headed bees now able to produce bronze in their bodies?" After Zhen Shishir carefully examined it with her telekinesis, she frowned and said, "It's a crossbow arrow." The others heard this and were stunned. The most essential difference between zombies, mutant beasts, and humans was that humans could use tools and weapons. Mutant beasts naturally couldn't use tools and weapons. Even the strongest mutant zombies had never seen them use weapons. After all, for them, no matter how powerful the weapon was, it was not as good as their claws and teeth. So now that a bronze crossbow arrow suddenly appeared here, it could only mean one thing. There were other people here. And this person obviously didn't come with good intentions. Xueqi quickly spread out her telekinesis again to explore the surroundings. But the range of her telekinesis could only reach a radius of 400 meters. Within the range of her detection, she didn't see any other people at all. There were 2 mutant beasts, but it was obvious that they couldn't pose any threat to them. She could only shake her head to the others and said, "I'll be on guard. Haoren, you fix it quickly." Haoren nodded, "Don't worry, Xueqi." Chapter 96. Haoren took out all kinds of tools and began to get busy. It seemed that he was very familiar with it. Generally speaking, people who became hunters focused on training and working hard to improve their strength. It was impossible to waste time on things like fixing things. It was really surprising that Haoren could fix things so skillfully. However, Emoshir's attention was not here at the moment. His telekinesis covered a radius of 1,000 meters. Just as he released his telekinesis, he discovered that a figure had appeared more than 900 meters away. That person held a bronze crossbow in his hand and was running southeast. When Emoshir planned to investigate carefully, that person had already run out of Emoshir's detection range. Emoshir frowned slightly. He did not chase after him. First, it would expose his strength. Second, what if there was danger? Third, it was not necessary. With his cautious personality, he would not casually take risks when there were no huge benefits. However, why did he feel that the way that person ran was strange? It seemed a little stiff. But compared to the stiffness of zombies, it was much better. And the clothes that the figure was wearing did not look like ordinary clothes. As for what was wrong, Emoshir just used his telekinesis to roughly scan and could not tell. He just muttered in his heart, could it be that this was a zombie with a higher degree of mutation? Then he retracted his telekinesis and carefully scanned the bronze crossbow twice. He tried to find some clues from this bronze crossbow. As a result, he found that although there were a few fingerprints left on the bronze crossbow, but those fingerprints were very strange. Every fingerprint seemed to be there and then not. Emoshir's eyebrows slightly creased again. But it did not matter. He still had a trick that could greatly increase the detection range. With a thought, he took out the virtual sentry tower from his backpack. The virtual sentry tower was activated and covered a radius of 5 kilometers. And Emoshir's telekinesis, with the help of the virtual sentry tower, instantly covered a radius of 5 kilometers. He had a panoramic view of everything within a 5-kilometer radius. After his telekinesis reached level 10, he found that his telekinesis and the virtual sentry tower could interact. As long as the virtual sentry tower was activated, his telekinesis would be able to use the sentry tower to explore a radius of 5 kilometers. At this time, his telekinesis swept across a radius of 5 kilometers and quickly found the figure. The man was holding a bronze crossbow. A quiver of arrows hung from his waist. He was 1.8 meters tall. The strange thing was that he was wearing an ancient costume. It wasn't an ordinary ancient costume. Rather, it was similar to the Terracotta Army's battle armor and battle robes. Her hair was also tied into a crooked bun. Why was this person dressed exactly the same as the Terracotta Warriors? Cosplay? Then he carefully investigated. The man's face was painted green. It was a pale green color. Moreover, this pale green face was broken. From his left temple all the way to his nose, there was a piece missing. But it didn't look like a zombie's broken body. The zombies were badly mutilated and badly mutilated. As for this green-faced guy, the damage on his face was like a broken vase that had a piece of it knocked off. Or rather, it was like an eggshell that was missing a piece. But the strange thing was that through the hole on his head, he could clearly see the flesh inside. He could even see that the brain inside was still beating. Seeing this scene, even the experienced and knowledgeable Emoshir couldn't help but gasp in his heart. What the hell was this? It was called a Terracotta Army, but there was flesh and blood inside. It was called a zombie, but why did its shell look like it was made of clay? At this time, this green-faced Terracotta Army zombie was running towards the northeast at a speed of nearly 200 meters per second. A moment later, they passed through a half-collapsed door that was covered in green plants. This gate was in an antique style. Emosher carefully examined it and vaguely recognized a few large words on the gate. Qing. Army. Museum. Emosher understood that this was once the Terracotta Army Museum. Not far in front of this gate there was a huge roof. The size of this huge roof was more than 50 basketball courts. On the roof, hundreds of mutant bats were hanging upside down. Each of them was more than 5 meters long. They were much longer than the mutant bats he had seen before. Below these bats there were 3 huge pits. In these 3 pits, there were 8,000 Terracotta Army soldiers. The whole thing looked extremely magnificent and extraordinary. More than 8,000 soldiers and horses had been quietly standing for more than 2,000 years. Even when the world was swept by the virus, they still miraculously stood tall. Emosher carefully examined these Terracotta Army soldiers. There was no second monster like the green-faced Terracotta Army soldier. In his previous life he had been to the Terracotta Army Museum. According to the guide, when the other Terracotta Army soldiers were unearthed from the 3 pits, they were either flesh-colored or pinkish-white. Only the kneeling Terracotta Army soldier, other than his hair, beard and black pupils, his face was completely green. There were many guesses about this. Some said that the green-faced Terracotta Army was a prank by the craftsman. Some said that the green-faced Terracotta Army was similar to a shaman. Some said that the green-faced Terracotta Army was used to scare the enemy. Emosher guessed that this Terracotta Army soldier might have been cuckolded by his neighbor. But now it seemed that it was all nonsense. The reason why he painted his face green was most likely related to his current appearance. At the same time, Emosher remembered an article he had read before. It said that one night an old man guarding the entrance of a museum was killed. No matter what, the murderer could not be found. In the end, blood was found on the hands of a green-faced Terracotta Army soldier. After comparing it with the old man's DNA, it was found to be the old man's blood. Some people said that this green-faced Terracotta Army soldier was resurrected and killed the old man. Of course, Emosher thought that it was all nonsense. At this time he spread out his telekinesis, trying to find the green-faced monster. But after scanning the place 3 times he could not find any trace of it. Emosher shook his head and stopped paying attention to it. Whether it was a green-faced monster or a green-faced fatty he did not care. He thought that if he went to the museum and signed in, he should be able to get a special reward. He looked at the others and saw that they were not paying attention. His pupils immediately turned blood red, and he looked in the direction of the museum. There was indeed corpse energy there. But there was very little corpse energy, only a wisp. Obviously this was the corpse energy of the green-faced monster just now. Since there was corpse energy, that guy must be a zombie. Emosher thought for a while, turned to the other 3 and said, "I want to pee." Howrin laughed and said, "Brother, you really have a good taste in this kind of place." Emosher was speechless. "Pee." Howrin grinned and said, "Let's do it here." Emosher glanced at Zhen Shirshir and said, "There's a woman here, I can't pee." Zhen Shirshir snorted, "Tsk, as if you haven't seen anyone before." Howrin laughed, "Be careful, your little bug will be eaten by mutated beasts." Emosher didn't pay any attention to him. He stepped on the tall grass and entered a small forest more than 10 meters away. The next moment his footsteps were light. With a few steps he was more than 500 meters away. When those people were completely out of sight he used the dragon shadow step. With one step he ran 1,000 meters in the direction of the museum. Only a 10-meter tall dragon shadow was left behind. But even if it was just a shadow, it was still domineering. Fortunately, in the forest and far away from those people he was not seen by them. Chapter 97. Emosher covered 1,000 meters in one step. With every step he would leave behind a 10-meter-tall and 30-meter-long dragon phantom. Then it slowly disappeared. In just 4.5 steps he arrived at the half-collapsed entrance of the museum. He scanned the surroundings with his psychic power again. He still didn't find the green-faced monster. He shook his head and decided to ignore it for now. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." As soon as he finished speaking, the system replied, "Frowny face, sign in successful." Sign in location, Qin Shi Terracotta Army Museum. Sign in reward, Qin crossbow. Emosher frowned and sighed. He was obviously not satisfied with this Qin crossbow. He already had the sky-killing dragon spear as a long-range attack weapon, so this Qin crossbow seemed quite useless. It couldn't be more powerful than the sky-killing dragon spear, right? He checked the Qin crossbow in his backpack with his mind. Qin Nu's appearance was also very ordinary. A wooden bow and a bronze crossbow. It came with a wooden crossbow arrow. Compared to the demon-devouring dragon spear, even the sky-killing dragon spear, forget it, let's not compare. Emoshir smiled bitterly. He focused his mind on the Qin crossbow. An item introduction immediately appeared on it. It was very simple. There were only 7 words: frowny face Qin crossbow, pierced through everything on earth. When Emoshir saw this, his furrowed brows suddenly relaxed. Pierced through everything on earth, what kind of concept was this? In other words, nothing on earth could withstand a blow from it. Emoshir suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked, "System, you only gave me 1 crossbow arrow? It's useless after 1 shot?" The system replied, "Frowny face, you can specify the sign-in reward, received crossbow arrow." Emoshir nodded. "That's more like it." At this moment the system's voice sounded again. "This is a special place. You can sign in twice a day." A smile appeared on Emoshir's face. This was good. He said again, "System, sign in." The system replied instantly, "Frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, mutated bat lair. Sign in reward, mutated bat king gene enhancer 1. Emoshir's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Thinking of this, he was looking forward to it. He took out the mutated bat king gene enhancer. It was a blood-red liquid. It was as red as fresh blood. He rolled up his sleeves and injected the mutated bat king gene enhancer into his left arm. Then he used his telekinesis to carefully observe the flow of the medicine. After the medicinal energy entered his body, it flowed along his blood vessels to his heart. Then it was pumped out by the heart and flowed through all the blood vessels to the rest of the body. In the end, the medicinal power fused with almost all the cells in his body. A new type of gene appeared in his body. At some point he felt a burning sensation on his back and between his ribs. This burning sensation was mainly concentrated on his 2 shoulder blades. Emoshir had a bad premonition. He lamented in his heart, "My clothes." In the next moment, Ryup, a clear and crisp sound came from behind. His back immediately felt much cooler. At the same time, a pair of blood-red wings with a wingspan of 5 meters appeared. This pair of blood-red wings was similar to a bat's in both shape and appearance. At the tip of the wings there were sharp claws. These claws were not like the claws of ordinary bats. Instead they were like crescent-shaped sickles. Cold light flickered on them and the atmosphere was oppressive. Emoshir's mind moved. The pair of wings circled around his body and reached his chest. Looking at this pair of blood-red wings, he was quite satisfied. He tried to flap the wings. His whole body immediately flew up shakily. Although it was a pair of wings that he had just obtained. These wings were like his arms and he didn't feel any awkwardness when using them. However, this was his first time practicing flying. He couldn't quite grasp the strength and the amplitude of the wings' movement. Swaying, swaying, swaying. He flew around the museum. He gradually got used to it. His speed wasn't slow either, reaching 300 meters per second. Although it was much slower than the Dragon Shadow Step, it was much faster than other hunters. One had to know that other hunters, even if they reached level 10, only had a speed of 200 meters per second. Moreover, if it was inconvenient to use the Dragon Shadow Step on special terrain, this pair of wings was the best choice. After a test flight, Emoshir landed. He retracted the wings back into his body. On his back, the skin that had been torn apart before quickly closed again. It was as smooth as new, as if it had never grown wings before. At this moment, a gust of wind blew past. Emoshir only felt a chill on his back. He sighed. This pair of wings was awesome, but it was a waste of clothes. Then he took out a piece of old clothes from his backpack and put it on. He turned around and glanced at the museum. Emoshir hesitated for a moment, but in the end he didn't go in to investigate. He always felt that this museum was too strange. He clearly detected that the green-faced monster went in. However, after entering the figurine pit, the green-faced monster disappeared. In the apocalypse, survival was the way to go. As for the others, they were all secondary. Thinking of this, he just used his telekinesis to scan slightly. In the next moment, the hundreds of mutated bats hanging upside down on the roof of the museum were suddenly torn apart. For a moment, the entire museum was like a heavy rain of blood and broken limbs. The 3 figurine pits were all dyed red with blood. All of the 8,000 terracotta soldiers were dyed red with blood. In Emoshir's mind, the system once again refreshed. Killed level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. Killed level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. After a moment of counting, this wave of killing a total of 300 mutated bats, gain more than 1 million evolution points. Seeing this, Emosure nodded with satisfaction. He didn't stay any longer. His feet lightly stepped and his figure instantly leaped forward. Only a 10-meter tall giant dragon shadow was left behind. At the same time after Emosure left, in the figurine pit, tentacles as thick as fingers drilled out. If one looked carefully, one could see that each tentacle was made up of hundreds and thousands of extremely small arms. After these tentacles drilled out of the ground, they were like small snakes, crawling in all directions. Soon the entire figurine pit was covered with blood-red tentacles. Moreover, they climbed along the legs of the terracotta soldiers and climbed up their bodies. The terracotta soldiers suddenly seemed to be formed by blood-red tentacles. All of the tentacles were greedily absorbing the blood and flesh of the bats on the ground. In a short 5 minutes, the blood and flesh of the 300 bats were completely absorbed. Then, in the figurine pit, blood began to seep out from the tentacles. Soon, the blood in the figurine pit was enough to cover the ground. A thick smell of blood immediately spread out. The tentacles were still quickly seeping out blood. Half an hour later, the 3 huge figurine pits had turned into 3 huge blood pools that were about 1.5 meters deep. These 3 blood pools, the largest one was the size of 30 basketball courts. The smallest one was the size of 5 football courts. At this time, the blood had just reached the neck of the terracotta soldiers. Looking from above, it looked like thousands of human heads were floating on the water. Extremely strange. Chapter 98. Emosure took another 4.5 steps and returned to the grove. When he left, he used his telekinesis to create a telekinesis illusion to replace himself. After reaching level 10 telekinesis, he could use his telekinesis to create a temporary telekinesis illusion to replace himself. Psychokinesis could be used to confuse the enemy. Ordinary people couldn't see telekinesis illusions, but psychokinesis could. It could be said that telekinesis illusions were a godly skill used to deceive psychokinesis. Naturally, he did this to prevent Xueqi from detecting any abnormalities. When he returned to the helicopter, it had been repaired and was waiting for him. Howren saw Emosure and laughed. You changed your clothes just to relieve yourself? Did you pee on your clothes? Emosure smiled bitterly and said, that shirt was very old. It was scraped by the thorns on the tree just now and turned into strips of cloth. The researcher knew that Emosure was a mysterious strong man. He wondered if he had gone to kill zombies and mutant beasts just now. Howren and Xueqi were puzzled, but they didn't suspect much. After all, in their eyes, this corpse keeper was just an ordinary person. Then the helicopter slowly rose and flew toward the northeast. However, when Emosure looked down with the blood demon's eye, he frowned slightly. He saw that there was only a wisp of corpse aura above the museum just now, but now it was full of corpse aura. It covered a 5-kilometer radius around the museum. It was the first time Emosure had seen such a strong corpse aura. The corpse aura of the dam and the C9 base was not even worth mentioning compared to this. However, the corpse aura here was not the strongest. About 1,500 meters to the west of the museum, there was a small mountain there which was the mausoleum of Emperor Qin. The corpse aura above the mausoleum was even more terrifying. It directly covered half the sky. It was like a blood-red sandstorm that covered the sky and the earth. There was even a large amount of corpse aura in the center that seemed to be solidified. Even when millions of zombies had besieged the city, there hadn't been such a strong zombie aura. Even Emosure couldn't help but feel a chill when he saw the almost solidified corpse chi. Moreover, the corpse chi gave him a very oppressive feeling. He had never felt this way when he saw corpse chi before. Obviously, the zombie that could produce this kind of corpse energy must be a terrifyingly strong zombie. And according to his previous experience, that guy's strength is likely to have surpassed level 10 mutant zombies. Emosure thought to himself, the wilderness is really dangerous. It seemed like he had better stay in the base and improve his strength if he had nothing to do. Although Xueqi couldn't see the corpse energy as a psychokinesis, her senses were far stronger than the average person's. She frowned and looked in the direction of Emperor Qin's mausoleum. I keep feeling that there's something wrong with that mountain. Let's leave quickly. Howren didn't say anything this time. He piloted the helicopter and quickly left the mausoleum. When Emperor Qin's mausoleum was about to disappear from their sight, Emosure looked back again and glanced at it with the blood demon's eyes. He saw that the corpse energy still covered half of the sky there. The rest of the journey was very smooth. With the previous lesson, Emosure didn't think about anything else. He used his telekinesis to explore the surroundings along the way. Once there were zombies and mutant beasts that were a threat to them, they would be killed immediately. Xueqi would sometimes detect the zombies and mutant beasts that Immortal killed. This made her feel a little scared. She felt that there seemed to be a strong person in front of them. Otherwise, how could she explain the mutant beasts and zombies that were killed along the way? But no matter how she probed with her telekinesis, she couldn't find any clues about the strong person. Finally, 2 hours later, they arrived at the sky above Base C2. Base C2 was half the size of Base C1. There were no walls, but there were 3 10-meter-high walls from the inside to the outside, which surrounded the base. Before the helicopter landed, Immortal used his telekinesis. It went directly into the researcher's mind. The researcher's name was Xueqi. After Immortal's telekinesis went into his mind, he began to stimulate his brain cells. His brain cells quickly became active. His brain waves also became stronger. Soon, the activity of his brain cells far exceeded that of an ordinary person. The strength of his brain waves also far exceeded that of an ordinary person. He had reached the strength of level 1 psychokinesis. However, this was not the end. Immortal continued to stimulate his brain cells. His telekinesis continued to increase. Level 2. Level 3. Level 4. Finally, his telekinesis stopped at level 5. From an ordinary person to a level 5 psychokinesis. It only took more than a minute. This was the power of the telekinesis blessing. When Sister Ponytail raised the ordinary people in the base to psychokinesis, most of them were level 1. Only one was level 2. This was because she was only a level 5 psychokinesis. Limited by her telekinesis, she could only raise it to this level. And Immortal's telekinesis far exceeded her. Therefore, he could easily raise others' telekinesis to level 5. Of course, if he wanted to forcefully raise it to level 6, he could do it. However, that would consume too much of his telekinesis. There was no need. Naturally, Xueqi also felt his own abnormality. His brain kept heating up. At the same time, he felt his mind clear and his eyes clear. The feeling that came from his head made him want to moan in pleasure. But at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Stay calm as if nothing happened. That voice was like a great bell in his mind. It was deafening and intimidating. He could not help but obey the voice's orders. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and pretended as if nothing had happened. Seeing this, Immortal nodded in his heart. The leader's will was indeed powerful. The reason why Immortal wanted to raise Xueqi to psychokinesis and use the leader's will on him. Naturally, he wanted him to be his informant. After what happened before, Immortal knew deeply that in this apocalypse, zombies and mutated beasts were not scary. What was scarier than zombies and mutated beasts was the human heart. Therefore, it was necessary to set up an informant in advance. Ren and Xueqi, who were next to them, could not imagine that the two people next to them were not ordinary people at all. They were psychokinesis, which was far more powerful than them. One was level 5 psychokinesis. The other was level 10 psychokinesis, which they could not imagine at all. Soon the helicopter landed. Ren called people over and arranged accommodation for Immortal and Xueqi. He said, "Don't neglect them. They are technical talents." Immortal and Xueqi were temporarily arranged in an apartment next to the hunting group. After entering the room, Immortal probed with his telekinesis again. He entered Xueqi's brain. He ordered Xueqi, "Don't expose your strength. If there is any important news in the future, report to me." Xueqi's response came quickly, "Yes." At the same time, Immortal had spread out his telekinesis to explore a radius of 1 kilometer. It was his first time here, so he had to be careful. At the same time, Ren and Xueqi had already gone to the base chief's office to report. Chapter 99. After Immortal and Xueqi settled down, Ren and Xueqi went to report to the chief of the base. The chief's office was in the hunter group's headquarters. Immortal's mind power probed out, and he could easily detect their every move. The chief was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was also a hunter. Seeing the two of them enter, he put down the documents in his hand and said, "This time, we sent 9 helicopters to the other 9 bases to exchange information. You two came back the latest." Ren lowered his head and said, "I'm sorry, Chief. We ran into some trouble." Then he told him how the people of Base C1 were hostile to them, how strange things happened, how they were locked up in the detention room and so on. As for how they were suddenly cleared of their wrongdoings and who did those things, the people of Base C1 didn't tell them at all. Naturally, they didn't know. Then they told the chief about the construction of the laboratory and the zombie farm. The bureau chief agreed with this. The helicopters that came back earlier had brought back all kinds of news from the other bases. They said that a few bases had built laboratories to study viruses, hunters, and psychokinesis. Their base C2 hadn't built a laboratory yet. He was planning to build a laboratory. In the end, Xueqi said, "Chief, on our way back it seems that there was a strong person in front of us." The chief's eyes narrowed slightly. Xueqi continued, "On the way back my psychic power could often detect the corpses of some mutated beasts and zombies on the ground. It seems that these mutated beasts and zombies were all killed in one move and torn in half. And even some level 5 mutated beasts and zombies were killed in one move." Hao Ren's expression changed slightly. "There's such a strong person?" The chief thought of another point. "You mean he was in front of you all the way?" Xueqi nodded. "It seems so." The chief frowned slightly. "In other words, he's probably in our base now?" Xueqi nodded. The bureau chief pondered for a moment and asked, "Could it be the two people you brought back?" Xueqi shook her head slightly. "The two of them are just ordinary people. They've been with us all this time, so it can't be them." When the bureau chief heard this, his expression became even more serious. "The strongest hunter in our base is only level 5. The strongest psychokinesis was only at level 5. If it's really as you said, then the strength of that powerhouse is obviously far beyond level 5. He sneaked into our base without anyone noticing. He must be up to something. Hao Ren, tell the hunter group to be on high alert. Xueqi, remind all the psychokinesis members to secretly investigate the base. Let's see if we can find anything." The two men looked at each other and said, "Yes, chief." In the end, the bureau chief said, "The 9 helicopters we sent this time brought back a lot of useful information. I'll get someone to explain it to you in detail later, so you can understand the current situation." When Immortal heard this, his heart skipped a beat. The world situation was important information. Soon, someone came over to explain the world situation to Xueqi and Hao Ren. From this, it could be seen that the chief thought highly of these two people. From this person, Immortal understood a lot of things that he didn't know before. And what surprised Immortal the most was that people in other bases had seen a zombie from afar. That was a much stronger and more terrifying existence than a level 10 strong mutated zombie. With a roar, more than 30 level 10 strong mutated beasts' heads exploded. All the other zombies, even level 10 strong mutated zombies, were obedient in front of that zombie. Because that zombie was much stronger than a level 10 strong mutated zombie. So they called it a super mutated zombie. When Immortal heard this, his heart trembled. There was a super mutated zombie? At the same time, he remembered the king that the two zombies mentioned when he killed them in the blood pool. It was very likely that the king was a super mutated zombie. With his current strength of level 10 psychokinesis, he could easily kill a level 10 strong mutated zombie. Then what about a super mutated zombie? Immortal felt that his telekinesis might have a little advantage. But the other party's roar could explode the head of a level 10 strong mutated beast. In other words, the other party could use sound waves to attack. That's hard to say. It seemed that in the next period of time, he had to sign in well and improve his strength. That night, Immortal signed in and injected 10 enhancers. After these 10 enhancers were injected, his body strength finally improved again. He reached level 10 hunter. In the next half a month he continued to sign in and give out enhancers, increasing his body strength to the limit. At this point, whether it was his telekinesis or his body strength, he had reached the limit. If he wanted to break through again, he really needed a certain opportunity. Perhaps the Dragon Ruins would be his opportunity. However, in the past few days he hadn't gone to the Dragon Ruins. After all, he didn't know much about the wilderness around base C2. It wouldn't be too late to go to the Dragon Ruins after he understood the surrounding situation. At the same time, in the past few days, the base had already begun to plan to build a laboratory and a corpse farm. Of course, the preparations would take a long time. Therefore, Immortal was very idle these days. He wandered around base C2 every day. In the eyes of others, he was taking a stroll and wandering. But when Immortal was wandering, he had been using his telekinesis to investigate everything in base C2. As long as anyone talked about base C2 and the situation around the base, they couldn't escape his detection. Finally, after a month, he had almost figured out the situation around base C2 and the surrounding area. The strength of the strong mutated beasts and strong mutated zombies around base C2 was much stronger than those around base C1. But they were all below level 10. Immortal could easily deal with them. At the same time he also heard a strange thing. 100 kilometers to the east, the plants there were blood red. Emosher took out the map and looked at it. 100 kilometers to the east was the location of the dragon ruins. This made him frown tightly. He thought that as long as he found the right opportunity here, he could easily go to the dragon ruins to sign in. He didn't expect that there would be something strange about the dragon ruins. Why was it so difficult to level up? If his thoughts were known by other hunters in psychokinesis, they would probably want to kick him to death. We only level up once every 4 to 5 years, or even 7 to 8 years. You level up several times a year. You think it's difficult? Difficult my ass. That night it was drizzling. Emosher lay on the bed, eating the roasted chicken that he had signed in from the cafeteria while drinking beer. He waited for the arrival of 12 o'clock. However, at around 11:30, an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the base. Deet deet deet. Chapter 100. At night, Emosher took out the virtual sentry tower and set it up on the roof of his apartment building. It was better to be careful as he was new here. 11:30 p.m. Emosher felt a little hungry. He immediately took out the roast chicken and beer and ate happily. In the past year, in order to make his mental power and physical strength reach the limit, he almost never went to the cafeteria to sign in. Now that both of them had reached the limit, he could finally satisfy his hunger. Just as he was happily eating the roast chicken and drinking beer, suddenly an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the base. Beep, beep, beep. Then urgent shouts could be heard from the loudspeaker. Zombies are attacking the city. All hunters and psychokinesis, immediately go to the northeast of the first line of defense. Emosher sighed. He couldn't even eat supper in peace. Then he shook his head and ignored it. According to his understanding in the past few days, there were many mutant beasts and zombies in the wilderness around Base C1. But at most they were strong mutant zombies below level 3. And Base C2 had level 5 hunters and level 5 psychokinesis. There was no need for him to do anything. Thinking of this, he continued to eat and drink happily. At this time in the northeast of Base C2, outside the first wall, there was already a large black mass of zombies gathered. Preliminary estimates showed that there were tens of thousands of zombies. Inside the wall, the hunter group had already gathered. They all had solemn expressions. Under the illumination of the searchlight on the sentry tower, they saw the zombies gathered on the opposite side. The total number was estimated to be 10,000. Among them, those standing in the back row had expressions that were obviously different from ordinary zombies. They were all strong mutant zombies. And the number of strong mutant zombies had reached a terrifying number of more than 1,000. This was equivalent to more than 1,000 hunters. Which base could have more than 1,000 hunters? It was already a lot to have 60 or 70 hunters. And in Base C2, there were only 63 hunters. Fortunately, there were more than 30 psychokinesis in Base C2. And there were more than 5,000 hunters. Clearly, this was going to be an extremely tragic battle. If they won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. If they lost, there wouldn't be many zombies left. As a hunter, the chief of the base personally came to the front line to command. His face was as still as water. Although they were facing an army, they did not panic at all. He commanded the hunting group in an orderly manner. But no one knew how heavy his heart was at this moment. In the past, when the zombies gathered to attack the city on a large scale, their scouts in the wild could detect some movements in advance. However, today, none of their scouts had returned with any news. This was enough to show that tonight's zombies were far stronger than before. They were so powerful that even the scouts couldn't send back any information. And because the scouts did not send back any information, their preparations were somewhat inadequate. So much so that they did not move the people to the underground shelters in advance. It was close to midnight. The light rain gradually turned into heavy rain. The rain poured down in torrents. From time to time, a bolt of lightning would appear in the sky, winding like a dragon. At a certain moment, a thick bolt of lightning tore through the night sky. Among the zombies, an 8-year-old lowly zombie girl slowly stood out. She was wearing a sky blue princess dress and had a double ponytail. If one looked at her from behind, she was definitely a cute little lowly. But if one looked at her from the front, the left side of her face had been torn open and had been drooping. When she walked, the left side of her face was like a pig's ear, flapping up and down. Her grayish-white eyes stared at the wall in the distance under the lightning. She paused for a few seconds. Suddenly, she raised her right claw and opened her torn mouth. From her throat, she let out a shocking roar. Roar, roar, In the next moment, these tens of thousands of zombies all roared. Accompanied by this deafening roar, all the zombies surged toward the high wall together. On the sentry tower, the base chief saw this and held the giant sword in his hand tightly. He shouted, "Fire! Da-da-da, da-da-da, whoosh, boom." Tongues of fire were constantly spurting out from the shooting holes on the high wall. Those ordinary zombies were suddenly swept to the ground one after another. Their flesh and blood were blown away by the rockets. However, the number of ordinary zombies was close to 10,000. They could not eliminate nearly 10,000 zombies in a short period of time. What's more, there were more than 1,000 strong mutated zombies. Artillery fire could not do anything to them. The distance between the strong mutated zombies and the high wall was quickly closing. On the sentry tower, the base chief ordered loudly, "Psychokinesis, prepare to attack with flying knives. Every psychokinesis, leave a hunter beside them to protect them. The rest of the hunters, go outside the wall and stop the zombies from attacking the wall. Be careful not to leave the range of your telekinesis." Soon, more than 30 hunters jumped down from the wall and lined up outside the wall. After a while, the flood of zombies collided with these 30 hunters. On the wall, nearly 400 flying knives were like 400 sides of the Grim Reaper, harvesting these zombies. Even if it was a strong mutated zombie, if it was accidentally hit in the head by these flying knives, it would be killed in one blow. And the lowly female zombie stared at the base chief on the sentry tower. In her grayish-white eyes, there was a fierce light. Like a beast that chose people to devour. At the same time in the base, urgent words were constantly coming out from the loudspeaker. "Emergency in the northeast, all positions, please send soldiers to support as soon as possible. I repeat, support as soon as possible." Emmo used his telekinesis to explore. In the heavy rain, he saw that the surrounding patrols had already headed to the northeast. At the same time, the zombie hunters, patrols and soldiers in other positions also rushed to the northeast. Emmo still did not move. "All residents, move to the nearest emergency shelter as soon as possible. All residents, move to the nearest emergency shelter as soon as possible." Emmo could detect that in the apartment building, almost everyone had already rushed to the nearest underground shelter. He still did not move and continued to eat his roasted chicken. At the same time, at the entrance of the underground shelter more than 700 meters away from the apartment building, people fled to the underground shelter as if they were crazy. Among the crowd, there were cries of children and women from time to time. Although everyone knew that the zombies were getting stronger and stronger, human hunters and psychokinesis were not getting stronger as fast as the zombies. Humans seemed to be heading towards extinction. However, when this day really came, they still could not believe it. Crack. In the sky, a bolt of lightning zigzagged across. Under this bolt of lightning, a figure suddenly appeared at the entrance of the shelter without warning. The soldier in charge of commanding at the entrance was shocked when he saw this figure. He quickly shone a flashlight over. In the heavy rain, the left side of the figure's face was badly mutilated. On the right side of his face, there wasn't even any flesh and blood, only white bones remained. The strangest thing was that this guy was actually grinning, as if he was laughing. Chapter 101. The hundreds of people at the entrance saw this scene and immediately fled in panic. "Zombies! There are zombies! Run!" The already chaotic entrance of the fallout shelter became even more chaotic. No one would have thought that when the zombie army besieged the city, almost everyone in the zombie hunter group was transferred to the northeast to defend, and zombies would suddenly appear in the rear. Zombies were not scary, but zombies with culture were scary. Even zombies knew the art of war. And this zombie with a smart look and a mocking smile on its mouth. It was obvious that it was a strong mutated zombie. The soldier with the flashlight saw this, although he was panicking. But at this time he was not thinking about himself, but the thousands of people here. Although he was a little panicked, he still raised his gun and aimed at the smiling zombie. The smiling zombie did not pay attention to the soldier at all. One in each hand, it grabbed a woman and a little girl next to it, turned around and quickly jumped away. The soldier was stunned. All the zombies he had seen before, whether ordinary zombies, mutated zombies, or strong mutated zombies, when they saw humans, they were like hungry wolves seeing lambs, and they directly pounced on them to tear them apart. But this zombie was not right. It did not bite the woman and the little girl. Instead, it grabbed the woman and the little girl, turned around, and fled into the darkness. What was going on? At the same time, several more zombies appeared near the fallout shelter. Each of them was a strong mutated zombie. They were all the same as the previous zombie. They did not fight with these soldiers. Instead, they grabbed the people next to them, turned around, and jumped into the darkness. In the apartment building next to the zombie hunter group's headquarters. Naturally, Xueqi was able to clearly detect all of this. In fact, when he set up the virtual sentry tower, his telekinesis spread out to a radius of 5 kilometers, and he had already detected that there were strong mutated zombies lurking outside the southwest city wall. Xueqi felt a little strange in his heart. The behavior of these zombies was very strange. Ordinary zombies could not help but roar when they saw humans. These zombies could clearly see the humans on the sentry tower by the high wall, but they could suppress their impulse and quietly lurk in the trees. It was very abnormal. Xueqi did not make a move because he wanted to wait and see what they were going to do. They had been lurking there for more than 3 hours. When the battle on the high wall in the northeast began, the nearby hunters, patrols, and corpse hunting teams all went there to reinforce. These more than 100-strong mutated zombies, under the cover of the heavy rain, jumped over the wall. They went all the way to the shelter. At this moment, an even stranger scene occurred. Those thousands of humans were clearly right in front of them, but they forcefully suppressed the urge to bite down. Instead, each zombie grabbed 2 humans, turned around and fled into the darkness. Were they going to capture them and use them as food for the winter? Just as Xueqi was puzzled, a zombie saw Xueqi's figure from the window. With a roar, he leaped towards Xueqi's window. However, as soon as he jumped into the air, bang! A muffled sound was heard. Its entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. If this zombie could dream, he would never have imagined that he would die in the hands of an ordinary human being in such a way. Xueqi sighed. Memory plunder could only plunder human memories. But it could not work on zombies. Otherwise, by plundering the memories of these zombies, he should be able to know why they took these humans back. At the same time, within a radius of 1 kilometer, a strong mutated zombie holding 2 women had just passed through the window of a house. His body made a muffled sound. Bang! It was like the sound of a cannon in the water. The 2 women were suddenly thrown to the ground. The 2 knew they were going to die and were terrified. There was even a woman who had long been paralyzed with fear. The other woman still had some strength. She did not know why the zombie suddenly threw her to the ground. She looked up. The night was dark and the rain poured down. Nothing could be seen. She did not have time to think and quickly got up to escape. Her heart was extremely flustered. She took a deep step and a shallow step. She fell to the ground from time to time. She had already foreseen that she would not be able to run a few steps before being caught by the claw. However, she had already escaped 50 meters away. There was still no movement. She escaped another 100 meters. There was still no movement behind her. She felt the darkness and escaped hundreds of meters away. Under the lightning, she saw the warehouse door in front of her open. She quickly hid in and closed the warehouse door. She did not understand what had happened. Did the zombie just let her go like this? At the same time, the other woman finally slowly came back to her senses. There was a trace of strength in her body. Crack! A bolt of lightning flashed. With the reflection of the lightning, she did not see any trace of zombies around her. She did not understand what had happened. Why did the zombie suddenly let her go? But this was not the time to be entangled. Using the last bit of strength in her body, she struggled to get up and ran forward, 1 step at a time. At the same time, a similar scene was happening to more than 200 people. Bang 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 bang, more than 100 zombies burst into more than 100 clouds of blood mist. With the current strength of Xueqi's telekinesis, these zombies were directly disintegrated. There were no broken limbs, no broken bodies. Their flesh and bones, under the effect of Xueqi's telekinesis, all burst into particles that were not visible to the naked eye. Only when they were together, could a cloud of blood mist be seen. The more than 200 people who were caught felt that they were suddenly thrown to the ground. When they got up, the zombies were nowhere to be seen. They did not have time to investigate further and got up to find a place to hide. At the same time, on the wall in the southeast corner, one of the zombies was running away. This was an 8-year-old lowly zombie. She had a double ponytail and was wearing a sky blue princess dress. Although she was small, her strength had reached level 5 strong mutant zombie. She was the strongest among all the zombies who had sneaked into the base. But at this time she seemed to be panicking. His grayish-white eyes were filled with astonishment. She thought that a large number of zombies attacking the city at the northeast wall would attract attention. She could easily capture a large number of humans with these hundreds of strong mutant zombies. But the result was, when she was about to succeed, she saw the more than 100 strong mutant zombies that she brought, almost at the same time, all burst into a cloud of blood mist. No minced meat. No broken bones. Only blood mist. She had never seen such a method. Even her leader, the level 10 strong mutant zombie, could not do it at all. This was enough to show that there was a hidden powerhouse in the human base. What a despicable human. The only thing she could do at this time was to escape. She could feel that the reason why she was not dead yet was that she was outside the attack range of the hidden powerhouse. If the hidden powerhouse chased after her, she would have no chance to escape at all. So she used a speed of 150 meters per second, shuttling quickly in the heavy rain. However, could she escape? Chapter 102. The night was dark and heavy rain was pouring down. In this rainy night, a little girl was running at high speed. The little girl was about 8 years old and had 2 ponytails. She was wearing a sky blue princess dress. From the front, she looked like a beautiful little loli. But there was a bloody wound behind her neck. Through the wound, one could see the cervical vertebra inside. As her head turned left and right, the cervical vertebra was also constantly turning. It looked exceptionally terrifying. However, at this moment, the little lowly zombie was very panicked. As she ran forward, she would look back from time to time. In the past, she had chased humans countless times. When humans were chased by her, they were like this. As they ran, they would look back from time to time. This time it was her turn. Her gray-white pupils were filled with shock and fear. Soon, she had already passed through the rain and escaped for 2 kilometers. With a leap, she easily jumped over the 3rd wall. She ran forward for another kilometer and crossed the 2nd wall. Then she ran for another kilometer at high speed. She was not far from the 1st wall. She looked back. The hidden powerhouse did not chase after her. She sighed in relief. Under the 1st wall, there were more than 10 soldiers. She did not care about them at all. As long as she jumped over the wall and entered the wilderness outside, she would be safe. Crack! A bolt of lightning cut through the night sky. She was as fast as lightning and stepped over the heads of the soldiers. She jumped onto the wall. As long as she took another step forward, she would be able to escape from the wall. However, in the next moment, whoosh, a black light seemed to be faster than lightning. It instantly cut through the sky and passed through the rain. It hit the head of the little lowly zombie and pierced through her mouth. The huge force sent the little lowly zombie flying for 100 meters. Bang! It was directly nailed to a white poplar tree that was more than a meter thick outside. Just like that, the little lowly zombie faced the tree trunk and hung 10 meters above the ground. It was as if a cute little girl was playing a game of princess kissing prince with the tree. However, on the back of the girl's head, there was a black spear that was more than a meter long. A moment later, the black spear seemed to be decomposed into gas by the rain and disappeared. The girl's body slowly slid down along the tree trunk. He brushed a bloody mark on the bark. Inside the wall, a soldier was shining a flashlight on the top of the wall. The soldier next to him asked, "Is there something wrong with him?" The soldier was puzzled. "I think I saw a girl standing on the wall." Another soldier scolded, "Did you shit your brains out when you were taking a dump? Which girl can jump up a wall that's more than 10 meters high? And in this terrible weather, which girl would run to the top of the wall?" "Are you crazy?" The soldier said, "That's a mutant zombie, a strong mutant zombie." "Oh right, there seems to be a long thorn growing from the back of her head." The other soldiers shook their heads. "I think there's something wrong with your head." The soldier shone his flashlight on the top of the wall but saw nothing. He shook his head himself. It was just a flash of lightning that he suddenly saw it. The time was too short so he couldn't see it clearly. Perhaps he was hallucinating. At the same time, on the 2nd floor of the apartment building next to the hunting group, Immortal retracted his gaze from the window. He sighed, "It's raining heavily." Then he went back to the table and picked up the remaining half bottle of beer. He gulped it down. Burp, he let out a long burp. Northeast of the base, outside the wall, the zombies had already gained the upper hand. The hunting group lost 5 hunters. Psychokinesis also had one person's arm scratched by a zombie. Although the arm had been cut off, it was basically useless. He would soon become a zombie. As for the hunters, more than 100 people died and more than 300 were injured. Fighting with zombies, being injured was equivalent to death. At this time, only 200 of the strong mutant zombies were lost. On the sentry tower, the base chief's face was as solemn as the dark rainy night. Tonight's battle, even if they could win in the end, more than half of the hunting group would be killed. At this time in the wilderness outside the high wall, a roar suddenly sounded. Roar, roar, all the zombies heard this roar. They suddenly turned around and retreated into the wilderness. In just over a minute, the nearly 10,000 zombies had all retreated. Only corpses were left on the ground. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? When zombies attacked cities, they basically didn't care about the cost. In the past few sieges, even if they did not have any advantage, they would fight until the last zombie fell. But today they clearly had the advantage. Why did they suddenly retreat? Hao Ren jumped a few times from outside the wall and came to the sentry tower. He said to the base chief, "Chief, why did these bastards suddenly retreat?" The base chief shook his head. There must be something fishy about this. But he could not figure it out for a while. At this time, a soldier under the sentry tower reported, "Chief, zombies sneaked into the base." Hearing this, the chief's face suddenly changed. He finally understood why these zombies suddenly retreated. It was a diversion. Thinking of this, he immediately roared, "Leave half of the hunters and psychokinesis guards. The rest come back with me." Hao Ren's face also changed when he heard this. He cursed, "These bastards, how dare they do this?" Then he jumped down from the sentry tower and was about to return to the base. Behind him, Zhen Shishir also followed. "Hao Ren, I'll go too." Hao Ren did not say anything. He pulled Zhen Shishir up and ran forward quickly. In the apartment building, Emoshir saw that it was already past 12 o'clock. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system's voice quickly came, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in event, kill the strong mutated zombie who abducted humans. Sign in reward, memory plunder upgraded. Looking carefully at the skill description, frowny face, memory plunder. Use psychic power to plunder the memory of any creature. Note, the brain of a creature whose memory is plundered will be damaged to a certain extent. In serious cases, it will cause mental retardation. Use with caution. Emoshir looked at the skill description and couldn't help but chuckle. The previous memory plunder could only plunder the memory of humans. But in the base it was not very useful. Zombies and mutant beasts knew more about the wilderness than anyone else. Previously he was still worried about how to obtain a large amount of information about the wilderness. But he didn't expect the system to upgrade memory plunder so quickly. With this skill, the next step would be to start with the zombies and mutated beasts to find out the situation in the dragon ruins. Only after figuring out the situation there would he have the confidence to make a move. Otherwise, if he went rashly and there was a super mutated zombie there, wouldn't he be sending himself to death for nothing? After doing all this, Emoshir yawned. He closed his eyes in satisfaction. Not long after, snoring sounds could be heard. However, not long after, the door was suddenly knocked open with a bang. A black shadow instantly jumped into the room. Emoshir, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened his eyes. Chapter 103. Emoshir had just fallen asleep when the door was suddenly kicked open. A figure suddenly jumped into the room. Emoshir suddenly opened his eyes. The figure stopped in the middle of the room and said loudly, "Emoshir, Emoshir." It turned out to be Hao Ren. Emoshir replied, "I'm here." Hao Ren strode into the bedroom and was relieved to see that Emoshir was fine. Then he laughed, "You're so relaxed. Didn't you hear the alarm in the base?" Emoshir yawned and got up. "I'm too tired today. I slept too soundly." Hao Ren was speechless. "Just stay in the bedroom and don't run around. A zombie broke in." Emoshir nodded, "Okay." Hao Ren said a few words and quickly left. Emoshir closed the door and went back to sleep. As for the others, they were naturally not in the mood to sleep. Most of them had already moved to the underground shelter. Even those who didn't enter the underground shelter were hiding in their own houses and didn't dare to breathe. But what made them feel strange was that the base chief led the hunting group to search in the heavy rain for most of the night. But they couldn't find any zombies. It wasn't until dawn that the heavy rain finally stopped. The sun was shining brightly. The world that had been washed by the heavy rain for a night was exceptionally clear. The hunting group found some clues at this time. They found more than 100 pieces of clothes. As for other clues, they found nothing. The base chief gathered all the people who were caught last night. First, he gave them a physical examination to confirm that they were not infected with the virus. Then he questioned them one by one. A woman recalled the situation last night. She seemed to still have some lingering fear. She said in a trembling voice, "At that time, I was caught by the zombie and kept running in the rain. But I don't know why it suddenly threw me on the ground. I quickly got up and ran. I thought that I would be caught again after a few steps, but I didn't expect that it didn't catch up with me until I ran to the warehouse. Another man recalled the situation last night and said, I was about the same. The zombie suddenly threw me down. I looked around but it was dark and I couldn't see anything. I tried to run a few steps but didn't see the zombie chasing after me, so I quickly hid in the training room. What the others said was basically the same. From the moment they were thrown away, no one had seen a single zombie. It was as if those zombies had all evaporated in an instant. But what's with these scraps of cloth? The base chief frowned as he looked at the tattered pieces of clothing in front of him. It looked like there was a bomb in the zombies' bodies that suddenly exploded. However, no matter how much he exploded, he should have at least found some flesh and bones. However, even after searching the entire neighborhood, they could not find even a single piece of meat or bone. This puzzled everyone in the base. Now, it seemed that the zombies in the northeast had launched a large-scale attack just to attract the attention of the base. It was so that the zombies could easily sneak into the base and capture the humans. But why did these powerful mutated zombies suddenly disappear? There were also pieces of cloth left on the ground. No matter how good a person was at reasoning, they would not be able to figure it out even if they scratched their heads. At the same time, on the sentry tower by the wall in the southeast corner of the base, a zombie hunter was using binoculars to observe the outside of the wall. At a certain moment, his eyes suddenly focused. He saw that 100 meters away from the wall, under a big tree, a little girl was lying there. The zombie hunter's heart skipped a beat. He took a closer look. He saw that there seemed to be a hole in the back of the girl's head. He quickly reported this discovery to his superiors. Not long after, a few hunters came to the outside of the wall. They brought the little girl's body back. At this time, everyone realized that this was not a little girl but a little zombie. When the lowly zombie's corpse was brought into the encirclement, a soldier suddenly yelled out, "It's her." Everyone looked at the soldier. The soldier strode to the little zombie's body. He turned his head back with some excitement and said to the other soldiers, "Do you remember that I told you last night that I seemed to see a little girl standing on the wall? It's her." Hearing this, the soldiers were also surprised. "Yes, we didn't believe it at that time." The soldier said again, "At that time, although it was just a flash of lightning and I didn't see it clearly, I saw that she was wearing this. And at that time, I saw a long thorn more than 1 meter long on the back of her head, and she was about to jump out. From the looks of it, it shouldn't be some sort of thorn. Instead, it should be something that pierced her head." Hearing this, the hunters hurriedly reported this to their superiors. In the end, the chief of the base received the news and rushed over. He invited a few experts to analyze the holes left on the big tree outside, the holes on the little zombie's head, and combined with what the soldier said, they roughly reconstructed the situation at that time. However, the experts were somewhat in disbelief. The chief of the base saw that something was wrong. He asked, "What's wrong?" An expert pushed his glasses and said, "Chief, we don't dare to say anything." The chief of the base said, "If you have something to say, just say it." The expert with glasses glanced at the other experts, and the other experts nodded. The expert with glasses then said, "According to the situation at the scene combined with the soldier's description, we speculated that when the zombie climbed over the wall and wanted to jump out of the base, someone threw a javelin from about 5 kilometers away and pierced through her head." Moreover, the huge inertia of the javelin carried it 100 meters away and nailed it to the tree outside. But the javelin was pulled out later. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. This was too ridiculous. A hunter shook his head. Throwing a javelin from 5 kilometers away? Although any hunter can do it, who would have the accuracy to do it? Another hunter added, "Besides, the javelin flew for 5 kilometers and carried a zombie for 100 meters. How much strength does it take to do that? Even the level 5 hunter Howrin can't do that." The other experts nodded. The expert with glasses pushed his glasses again and said, "That's why we didn't dare to say anything. Because we think that this result is too ridiculous. But according to the analysis of the scene, it was like that at that time." The chief of the base frowned. At some point he suddenly remembered what Jin Shirshir said before. When Jin Shirshir and the others came back, they reported that they always felt that there was a strong person ahead of them. This strong person killed a lot of zombies and mutated beasts along the way, but they didn't hear any sounds of fighting. Later, he specially ordered all the psychokinesis to secretly investigate the entire base several times. But they didn't find any strong person at all. But now, it seemed that there really was a mysterious strong person in the base. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.